The Iterum Apostle has just fused with its third fragment, and it made him transform from a cute little child into a hot oppa, rivaling even the likes of Sung Jinwoo himself. Speaking of rivalry, it's not going to be just about aura farming and their drip. Suho has just finished beating the Pyramid Dungeon after undergoing an incredibly challenging objective of setting Amit free from his shackles. He also just finished trying out the growth of his strength by fighting off powerful monsters from the airport Red Gate. But in the following events, while also receiving a new form of daily quests, everything's about to get even tougher than before. Will Suho be able to survive the insufferable amount of odds coming his way? Let's find out. After the night when Teal's third personality consumed her second personality, let's move to the next dawn where we can see Suho, extremely tired, lying on his sofa at home. Biru appeared beside Suho, sad and tearful, saying he looked completely exhausted. Suho replied that of course he was tired, as he had just come from his uncle who had given him a long lecture. Uncle Jinho had told him that while protecting Earth was a good thing, keeping Suho safe was more important, especially since Jinho didn't know how to face Suho's parents if something bad happened to him. Suho felt somewhat happy remembering what his uncle had told him, particularly because it meant his parents were also deeply concerned about him. Out of happiness, Suho decided to go to the Shadow Dungeon with Biru. But Biru said he thought Suho needed to rest a bit first. Suho just said he would rest later. And Suho's reason was simple. Because of his rush earlier, he hadn't been able to complete his daily quest early, and he couldn't afford to miss out on his daily rewards. Biru worried about this and thought that Suho seemed to be becoming addicted to getting stronger. Upon arriving at the Shadow Dungeon, Suho was shocked by what he saw. From now on, he no longer had regularly recurring daily quests. And the system's reason for this, based on the notice it gave, was that all otherworldly residents who used to live inside the Shadow Dungeon had been defeated. And because all those farmable monsters were depleted, their daily quests had ended permanently. Suho immediately called for Amit, Essel, and Gray. Then he asked the three of them what had happened inside the Shadow Dungeon. Amit was silent, and Essel seemed embarrassed to speak, while Gray just barked. In the end, Essel told Suho what had really happened. Amit had managed to kill all the remaining goblins inside the Shadow Dungeon overnight, and he hadn't left a single goblin alive. He had done this quickly, and using his S-rank-like strength and speed, he had wiped them all out using his chains. Amit proudly crossed his arms and explained to Suho that he had only killed Tarnak's loathful servants that he had seen inside Suho's territory, and he was still keeping his promise not to kill humans. Suho just held his head with both hands in intense disappointment. He said that because Amit had killed so many goblins, his growth rate would slow down due to the lack of daily quests because of this. Amit was surprised by what he heard. But Amit suddenly spoke up and said if Suho just wanted to get stronger, he could train him. Suho was surprised by what Amit said. Suho asked Amit if he could really do that, and Amit said that even he hadn't started out strong right away, so he knew very well how to train and get stronger. At the moment Amit offered Suho his training, the system suddenly issued a notice to Suho, asking if he wanted to accept Amit's offer of a new daily quest. And this was his preparation to become strong. Suho couldn't believe that a replacement daily quest had come to him so quickly, so he immediately accepted it because he didn't want to miss this opportunity. When Suho accepted it, the status window lit up. Suho said he would trust what the system had given him. Afterward, Suho was just disappointed when he read from the quest log that his new daily quest only required him to complete 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run. He just wondered if this was really the way for him to get stronger. Amit answered his question, saying that wasn't enough for him to do. According to Amit, Suho needed to do all of that while carrying him on his back. The system confirmed that what Amit was saying was true. Suho and Essel were shocked by this. Then, Amit recognized that his current size was too heavy for Suho's current strength. So, Amit said that because his body had been destroyed and regenerated so many times because of Tarnak, he had the ability to manipulate his own body. So Suho shouldn't worry. Then, because of what Amit was doing, Gray, Suho, and Essel showed extreme shock. And after this, Amit approached Suho with a new form. He had transformed into a smaller version of himself, and he held Suho by the shoulder while saying he was now the right size. So, Amit said they could now start their training session. Suho reluctantly agreed and began positioning himself for push-ups. After this, Suho thought that Amit's strength might just be too far beyond his own strength, and this was the reason why the system was asking him to first reach the required level of 80 before unlocking his bond skill with Amit. Suho was somewhat excited by the idea that he would get a new teammate when he completed this quest. But while Suho was thinking, he was suddenly shocked and awakened to the reality of how far he still needed to go to become stronger. And this was because at the very first moment Amit sat on his back while he was doing push-ups, he immediately couldn't handle his weight, which was so heavy that it even destroyed the floor after he crashed into it. Amit just said, "Oops," because he had forgotten to explain something to Suho. He could indeed shrink his body, but this didn't include the ability to reduce his own weight. Essel worried for Suho, while Biru and Gray just showed discontent. Suho felt the extreme intensity of the push-ups he needed to do, and he couldn't believe he had to do this 100 times when on the very first one. He felt like the bones in his arms would break. Amit gave some advice and told Suho that he knew this was difficult and he should just endure the pain. Breaking down and regenerating one's own body was the only way Amit knew to strengthen the body. But tonight, let's first go to a field-type dungeon near Payu. We'll see Mistborns here again being burned for Stardust production. And based on the appearance of this Stardust factory, it looks advanced and high-tech compared to the destroyed factory at Seoul Station. And here inside, we can see Lee Min-sung waiting. Then, the multi-eyed demon he was waiting for also arrived. While smoking, Min-sung asked the demon how long he would need to do what he was doing. But the demon just told him he should be grateful because he had become part of this. This demon's name was Mormu, and he was the Stardust Factory overseer of the Payu field-type dungeon. He asked for agreement from Min-sung if it wasn't true that the Chosen One had saved them from their filthy lives. But Min-sung asked Mormu back about the filthy life he mentioned. And because of Min-sung's strong disagreement with Mormu's opinion, he attacked him extremely quickly using a dagger and cut 3 pieces of tentacles from Mormu's beard section. Angrily, Min-sung asked Mormu if he had a death wish, because as just a monster, he had dared to judge Min-sung's life. Mormu was silent and just froze in fear while Min-sung pointed his dagger at him. Next, Min-sung pocketed his dagger and asked Mormu where the child was. Mormu replied that the apostle was still busy. Then, Min-sung reminded Mormu that Lim Tae-gyu would soon return to Korea, and he asked Mormu to remind the apostle of his promise. But Mormu suddenly brought out a purified yellow stardust crystal and asked Min-sung why he wasn't using what the apostle had given him, like this one. Then, Mormu told the story that the Chosen One was the savior who had suddenly appeared and come for him after the Shadow Monarch destroyed the demon realm when he was driven out through a dimensional crack. The apostle was also the one they, the demons, thanked for his successful modification of the berserk poison to create stardust, and that stardust had given strength to their demons to destroy the traitors of the later household. Mormu explained that if Min-sung followed the apostle and ate his yellow crystal, he would have enough strength to defeat Tae-gyu himself. But Min-sung just got angry and threw his cigarette on the floor. He told Mormu not to talk about S-ranks because he didn't know anything about them. He also told the demon not to talk to him about their cult because he had no intention of using their own product. But Mormu just said what a foolish human he was, and because of this, he would always remain a loser. Min-sung walked out of the factory and the dungeon, and he was about to get into his car. While walking, he said he just needed to endure all this until the child killed Lim Tae-gyu. And the truth was, he even planned to report to the Hunter Association himself about everything Itarim was doing so they could take care of them. Min-sung's true end goal was to return everything to how it was before, when he was happy being a well-loved, brilliant, and famous celebrity. And when Min-sung's car was far away, we could see from above that there was a female hunter with long red hair spying on Min-sung. And this woman was reporting directly to the chairman of the Hunter Association. She reported to the chairman that she had seen Min-sung just coming out of the Payu field-type dungeon. And the woman told Chairman Jin-chul that the Stardust Factory seemed to be inside it. Jin-chul told her to just continue following Min-sung. And the name of this female hunter was Miho. After Jin-chul put down his smartphone, Choi Jong-in, who was with him in his office, spoke to him. Choi Jong-in said it seemed they were close to finding out what Lee Min-sung really planned to do. According to Choi Jong-in, during the airport dungeon break, all the association staff managing near the gates of that place had simultaneously lost their memories. And they were all hunters who had consumed stardust. Besides this, many hunters had been discovered acting strangely in different places, and the one common thing among them all was that they had all consumed stardust. Jean Shul said that because of the many questionable circumstances, the association planned to ban the use of stardust. Choi Jong-in asked him what they planned to do with Lee Min-sung. Jean Shul replied that they needed to catch Min-sung soon, as well as others involved with Min-sung in the stardust business. Choi Jong-in said he would help, along with his hunters, in this mission. After the two exchanged intense glares, Jean Shul suddenly looked at the picture frame on his table. In his mind, he remembered that Yu Jinho had mentioned to him that Suho had returned home safely. Then he gave a sentiment to himself while looking at the picture of him and Sung Jinwoo taken during the time they were still working at Seoul Police Station. If Suho was also a growth-type hunter like his father, Jean Shul knew there was a high chance that the hunter system would hinder him from doing what he needed to do. So Jean Shul promised that he would help Suho to the best of his ability. Returning to Suho's daily quest, we can see that he was on his 99th push-up, and it was clear from his gritted teeth that he was struggling terribly with this. And after he did his 100th push-up, various parts of his arms were destroyed, and blood even spurted out where his skin had ruptured. And after he completed the push-ups, he crashed to the floor again because of Amit's weight that he was carrying. Amit reminded Suho that he had only completed the push-ups and there was still much more to do, while Gray and Essel just cried out of extreme concern for Suho, whom they saw was completely wrecked in the arms. Biru also gave a violent reaction and scolded Amit, calling him a stupid crocodile. Biru tried to stop the training, but while Suho's weakened hands were trembling, he still opened his status window to buy from the system shop. The four were puzzled by what they saw. Suho immediately drank an entire health potion to quickly recover his body, and Amit was impressed by this. Suho still had the determination to continue the training because he was determined to become stronger before facing Min-sung. So he wanted to do nothing but continue getting stronger. And in his new image, we can see that his physique had already changed significantly. He was now a muscular man. After some time, Biru and Essel were still constantly worried about Suho, who was still persevering with his daily quest. And now he was in the middle of his sit-ups while using his bond skill with Gray. Suho was coughing blood from his mouth due to the intensity of the workout. But all the injuries he sustained, he just dealt with by drinking health potions. And by the time he was in the middle of his squats, there were so many empty health potion bottles scattered on the floor. And while he was in the middle of his 10-kilometer run, each step of his run was heavy because of Amit's weight. Amit thought that Suho still needed to use skills to barely endure the training. But it was really impressive that he could handle this because he didn't give up and was always looking for ways to do what needed to be done. Amit was certain that one day Suho would be able to surpass Tarnak himself and even other monarchs. After the weighted marathon, Suho's back hurt intensely, so he bought another potion. Next, he and Gray defused, and they were both just crying from the extreme exhaustion they felt. But the important thing was that his quest reward was here. Essel and Beru's stressful worries finally ended after today's training, and they all rested for a while. Suho was still trembling from exhaustion, but he was happy with his training and the rewards it brought. This gave him a strength increase, plus an endurance skill level up. Suho just told Amit that he would rely on him again for their training tomorrow, and Amit agreed with him. Suho wasn't sure how effective this was, but at least he was sure he would get stronger from it. Upon returning home, Biru covered Suho with a blanket after he quickly fell asleep the moment he collapsed onto the bed. Suho's fatigue was that intense, but Biru was proud of him. After this, Biru used the rare free time he now had to enjoy watching TV. But when he turned on the TV, the news caught his attention. According to the news, the association had issued new regulations for field-type dungeons due to recent dungeon breaks. The association had changed the rules regarding ownership benefits of large private guilds for field-type dungeons, and their first main target now was the Grim Reaper Guild. So the next day, we can see Lee Min-sung with a hot head again, feeling bad and irritable, in a meeting where agents from the Hunter Association were talking to him. According to one agent, the Grim Reaper Guild owned too many field-type dungeons, and the association could no longer leave these to them, especially since they posed a large threat to civilians. Another agent said that the association had ordered a raid on the B-rank field-type dungeon at Paiyu Field owned by the Grim Reaper Guild, and they wanted Lee Min-sung to join this raid because his hunter license was about to expire, as he hadn't participated in any raid for more than 6 months. In Lee Min-sung's mind, he just thought that Jin Shul was doing this to him to strangle him tightly and hurt his personal business. They had even chosen to target their largest Stardust factory. Because of this, Min-sung thought he should reject the association's demand no matter what. But before he could speak, he was just surprised that someone with him suddenly spoke for him, and he accepted the association's request. The agent thanked the guildmaster for his agreement, and this person was none other than the S-rank hunter Lim Taegyu, the guildmaster of the Grim Reaper Guild. He confidently said that they should follow the association's opinion. Min-sung was overwhelmed with worry and nervousness because of what happened. Min-sung thought that Taegyu must have deliberately come home early just to obstruct him. Before the agents left, they reminded Min-sung and Taegyu that they should join the party that would be dispatched for the Paiyu Field raid that would take place soon. After this, the room was filled with intense silence when only the two of them remained. Min-sung expressed his extreme disappointment at what Taegyu had done because giving up Paiyu Field would be a significant loss to their finances, especially since its value was so high. But Taegyu just asked him if he really thought the association planned to get rid of all field dungeons. Min-sung's eyes widened when Taegyu told him that he thought the association already knew about his secrets. Taegyu admonished Min-sung. He had previously warned him not to underestimate the association, but he had ignored this warning. Besides that, he had even used their own guild members for his activities while Taegyu was abroad. Then, Taegyu's gaze at Min-sung suddenly intensified as he asked how long he planned to treat him like a chauffeur who cleaned up his messes. Min-sung couldn't answer him because he was consumed by extreme fear. Then, the intense moment was suddenly interrupted when someone called Taegyu's smartphone. After they talked, he told Min-sung that a scout had called him to tell him that a new S-rank hunter had appeared in Korea. Because he would be visiting the association, he instructed Min-sung to prepare the contract money. And before he left Min-sung alone in the office, he told him that it might not be too late for them to fix the mess, so they should do their best to handle it together. But only bitterness emerged from Min-sung's heart because he was truly angry at S-rank hunters who were just lucky and became arrogant. The news that there was a new S-rank in Korea didn't help him either. Min-sung was extremely irritated with the child because until now, he still hadn't grown up enough to fight and kill Taegyu. Then, Min-sung's dark inner monologue suddenly stopped when he received a message on his phone. And when he saw it, he first wondered, then smiled. And he suddenly displayed an evil grin because in the image he received, he saw the appearance of the new S-rank hunter. And just from the man's eyes, he immediately recognized him as Teal. And the former child apostle was now a young man. Inside the Hunter Association headquarters, many reporters were waiting to interview the new S-rank hunter. No reporter felt comfortable approaching him, but a man who arrived caught his attention. And he gave him congratulations as the new S-rank hunter, Park Dojin. And this man was Choi Jong-in. Choi Jong-in was a bit puzzled because Park Dojin's appearance seemed familiar to him, so he asked if they had met before. Dojin replied that this was their first time meeting, but he knew a lot about Choi Jong-in. Choi Jong-in apologized to him. Choi Jong-in went straight to recruitment and offered Dojin if he wanted to join the Hunters Guild. But he immediately declined, because according to him, he had already chosen a guild he wanted to join, and he pointed out which guild it was using his index finger. And what he was pointing to was a man who had just entered the building, asking if he was too late. The reporters were surprised when they recognized the man Dojin was pointing to. Taegyu was also extremely shocked because he had just arrived, and the new S-rank hunter whom he was planning to talk to was already pointing at him. After a week, the raid on Paiyu Field began, and included in the raid party was Baek Mi-ho, an A-rank hunter from the White Tiger Guild. She was here as requested by the association. Lee Min-sung greeted her properly and politely, and he also introduced himself to her. Min-sung said that Mi-ho might be having difficulties, but Mi-ho said she wasn't, and it was right to help those in need. But deep inside, Mi-ho was impressed by Min-sung's acting skills. Min-sung was good at pretending to be kind, even though in reality, he was a two-faced person. But what was important to Mi-ho was that today they would expose Min-sung, along with the atrocities they were committing here inside Payu Field. But Miho couldn't help but worry because of the unknown variable joining them in the raid today. And this was the Grim Reaper Guild's new S-rank hunter whom they knew as Park Dojin. Miho had a bad feeling about Dojin's participation. But according to Miho, if they ever had a problem, she also had her own card to play. So, the Hunter Guild and Reaper Guild entered the dungeon. And the mining team also prepared to enter the dungeon. They took their pickaxes, and one of the members of this mining team was none other than Suho, who now had 1 week's worth of daily quest progress in the books. But now, let's go back a few days before the start of the Payu Field raid, where we can see Minsung happily talking to Teal. Minsung was just really pleased because Teal had grown so quickly since the last time they met. Minsung thought aliens just grew quickly, but Teal corrected him and said he had only chosen to have a small and young body because it was more advantageous for his survival at an early time. But now, according to Teal, he no longer needed to pretend to be a child because he had enough strength after merging with the third fragment. Minsung asked him why he chose to use the name Park Dojin and why he decided to become a hunter. What was Teal planning here? Teal answered that it was easier to appear in public using the name Park Dojin, and as a hunter, he could do various things outside without worrying. Minsung explained to Teal that because of the incident he had started at the airport, the Hunter Association was now pursuing Minsung using the excuse of causing civilian harm. And at the time they were discovered and their factory in Payu Field was revealed, they would both really be finished. But Teal just put down his teacup and said Minsung no longer needed to worry. That was why Teal had joined the Grim Reaper Guild, to ensure that what Minsung feared wouldn't happen. Teal planned to make the entire raid party into believers, and when that happened, no one there would find anything. Minsung praised Teal for his initial strong move, but also asked if he thought he could defeat Taegyu right now. Teal asked if Minsung was referring to his promise to kill Taegyu. And if so, according to Teal, he was certain of the outcome because they had already met. While Teal was explaining to Minsung about the possibility of what would happen if he immediately fought an S-rank hunter, Minsung just smiled at what he heard. Minsung said he didn't care if both Taegyu and Teal died, as long as he fulfilled his promise. Back to the present, we can see Wu Jinshul inside his office, seeming worried about the upcoming Payu Field raid. He hoped that the raid party would be able to find evidence about Minsung and the Stardust. But Jinshul was still somewhat at ease because one of those included in the raid party was Baek Miho from the White Tiger Guild, and she was reliable. But in case something serious happened, Choi Jong-in and another S-rank hunter were ready on standby. But the real reason why Jinshul was restless was because of Park Dojin, an unknown variable. His timing was perfect to appear as an S-rank hunter who immediately joined the Grim Reaper Guild to participate in the Payu Field raid. Jinshul couldn't shake the thought that Minsung seemed to have the upper hand because of this. However, there was one more thing giving Jinshul extreme worry. And this was Sung Suho's joining of the excavation crew for the Payu Field raid. Jinshul wondered if this was just a coincidence or fate, because he wasn't sure if he had made the right decision to approve Suho's participation in this. And if Suho really planned to be involved in the Payu Field raid, Jinshul thought it was his responsibility to help Suho with whatever he needed. And now, inside Payu Field, our raid party is facing a fire-breathing monster, and the party's armored and shielded tank is absorbing its fire breath attacks. After absorbing several attacks, he told his companions on the strike team that he couldn't prolong this anymore, so they should take action. When Miho suddenly arrived, the tank hunter was surprised to see her beside him. The salamander continued to breathe fire at them, but it was quickly stopped when Miho hit it with just a direct punch to the cheek. Next, Miho rained many punches on the salamander, and finally gave it a powerful uppercut that made the enemy vomit blood. After this, Miho immediately looked at her next target, another salamander behind her, and she quickly avoided its attack while running fast. Next, she jumped up onto the salamander and used its back as leverage to push her own body forcefully upward. Because of this, Miho landed on her feet on the ceiling and also used it as a platform to catapult herself back to the enemy at extreme speed. The fear in the salamander's eyes was clearly visible as they watched Miho approaching with a punch. And after Miho punched one in the nape, she quickly went to another salamander, which she gave a powerful elbow smash to the back. The floor where it landed was destroyed by the force of the impact. And after this, Her salamander opponents could no longer stand up. Miho just looked behind her because she noticed that Lee Min-sung still wasn't joining the fight, just continuing to chill and smoke at the back of the raid party. Miho was just irritated with him and thought that his being an A-rank hunter was a waste because being a hunter seemed like a joke to him. And because of Miho's deep thinking, she didn't notice that there was already another salamander pouncing on her. It was too late when she realized this, so she just thought oops in her mind. But she was saved by Park Dojin because he gave the monster a hand chop to the head. The force of this was extremely strong, even though Dojin looked relaxed. And it was so strong that we could see his hand smoking. He just told Miho to be careful. Miho was stunned by what happened and just remained standing and flabbergasted. She couldn't believe that Dojin had defeated the salamander so easily using just a simple hand chop. She realized that her first impressions of Dojin were wrong because he was indeed truly a strong S rank even though he dressed like a child. After this, Dojin prepared to attack while covering his mouth with the turtleneck coat he was wearing. In just 1 second, the heads of 3 salamanders suddenly flew. Their bodies just fell simultaneously because Dojin had beheaded them extremely quickly by himself and using only his one hand. In Miho's mind, she was really impressed by the different level of strength of S-rank hunters. It wasn't long before they depleted all the enemies, and Miho gave an official statement that it seemed they had wrapped up this area. According to her, they cleared this area faster than she expected. Miho added that too few monsters showed up to them compared to normal. Lee Min-sung showed joy at what Miho noticed. Min-sung explained to Miho that the Grim Reaper Guild was diligent in performing routine monster cullings to maintain their dungeons. So this meant their dungeons posed no threat to civilians. Miho pondered what Min-sung said. Miho wondered why the Grim Reaper Guild was doing routine monster cullings, because usually other guilds didn't care about that since there was no need to enter a dungeon every day. Because of this idea, Miho was certain that something strange was happening here in Paiyu Field. Next, Min-sung pointed the direction to the boss monster room to the entire party. Then Min-sung smiled maliciously because he thought that no matter how hard Miho tried to find evidence against him, she wouldn't find anything here that could be used to incriminate him. The demons had managed to dismantle the entire factory earlier, and they were hiding well somewhere within Paiyu Field. Min-sung was confident that Miho wouldn't find even a single trace of the factory. And Min-sung and Teal were also confident that because of what they planned to do, Miho wouldn't leave this dungeon with a sane mind. Meanwhile, somewhere in Paiyu Field, we can see Mormu with 2 more demons as bodyguards, a staghorn demon and a trihorn demon. The 3 of them were regretful because they wouldn't have the opportunity to meet the apostle today, even though they were in the same place now. But what was even more regrettable was the time they were wasting just being on standby with their firewood materials of mindless human bodies, instead of possibly producing stardust at this time. But what they didn't know was that they already had an enemy waiting just outside the door of their room. And this was Suho. Suho first confirmed with Biru if this was the right room where the demon presence he felt was coming from. Biru told him that Suho was right. So Suho forcefully opened the door and startled the demons. Mormu first asked who the person who entered was, but as an answer to his question, Suho just gave him a powerful and fast direct punch to the middle of his face. Suho had equipped Vulcan's horn for his punch, so the impact was extremely strong because the damage was amplified against demons. Because of this, Mormu's face was destroyed and his severed head flew far to the back. The 2 demons with him were suddenly frightened by what they witnessed. Suho posed after this, and his gauntlets were smoking. Then, Biru commented to him, saying he was extremely impressed by the new strength Suho showed. He had managed to take down a demon using just 1 punch. Biru thought the time Suho had given to his daily quest with Amit was really worth it. Suho suddenly noticed that the human bodies lined up and standing in the room no longer had minds of their own. This meant it was true that there was a stardust factory here in Paiyu. Then, Mormu suddenly spoke, and Suho became alert because Mormu mentioned his black mask. The severed head spoke and said he hadn't expected the black-masked hunter that the apostle referred to, who always disrupted their plans and activities, to show up now here in Paiyu. Then, Mormu's head's tentacles suddenly emitted a red aura, and they seemed to grow in front of Suho. Mormu said he was happy about Suho's arrival because Suho would be a good gift for the apostle. And while Mormu was saying this, He revealed his monster tentacle form, where he got a new body using his grown tentacles that shaped into a huge tentacle humanoid demon monster. Meanwhile, in the mining area of the mining team, there were two miners endlessly mining essence crystals. They discussed that so many essence crystals had accumulated inside the dungeon, and they couldn't believe that there were this many crystals inside a dungeon owned by a guild. The only explanation for this was that the Grim Reaper Guild probably had other sources of income from here in the Payu Field dungeon. The young miner told his older miner companion that he couldn't believe they had an E-rank hunter on their mining team, and the association had even allowed him to join them here. The older miner said not to be too harsh on the E-rank hunter because he was still young, and it was nice to see him working diligently. The younger miner asked the older miner if he was responsible for assigning Suho to the entrance of the dungeon where it was definitely safe. The older miner admitted to this. Then the younger miner suddenly complained because he was always assigned to the front lines. Then, the older miner said that Suho's cart could carry 4 times as much, so he invited his companion to help him there after they finished here. The younger miner sighed because he was too kind. But let's go straight to the tunnel entrance where we can see Suho currently facing the 3 demons. Because Suho's sense stats had also increased, he could now feel the magic power of his demon opponents like Biru, so he no longer needed to learn from Biru that Mormu's strength was equivalent to that of an A-rank hunter like Randolph, whom he had met at the Egypt Pyramid. According to Suho, he joined the mining team in this raid because he thought there was something interesting about the association assigning the Grim Reaper Guild itself to raid its own dungeon. Suho had figured out that the association might already have an idea about Stardust production factories. Suho's goal here was to find and identify the Iterum Apostle, so he was worried that because of the association's extreme interest in Minsung, they might hinder Suho from getting information about the Iterum Apostle. So, Suho immediately asked Mormu about the Apostle's location. Mormu thought that both Suho and the Apostle were interested in seeing each other and were both looking for each other. So Mormu just said that Suho would soon meet the Apostle, and while saying that, he grabbed Suho by his feet using his tentacles. Then, Mormu told Suho that he planned to beat him until he fell into a coma-like state before offering him to the Apostle. Mormu added that because he had caught Suho using his overwhelming strength, it was impossible for him to escape now. Suho looked at Mormu with unimpressed eyes while questioning the overwhelming strength he was referring to. But now, let's go back a few days ago to a time when Suho had just completed his 5th daily quest. Amit said he was extremely impressed with Suho because in just 5 days, he could now finish his daily quest alone. Gray cried about this because Suho no longer needed his bond skill to complete his workout tasks. Then, Suho's companions also mentioned to him that it was clearly visible in his physique that his body's strength now was far beyond what it was before. Suho tried to act cool as if he hadn't struggled, but when he looked at his companions, his strength also began to collapse, and he suddenly fell in front of the 4 of them. Gray just licked Suho as he lay on the floor. Suho was extremely happy with his decision to put all his stat points into his strength stat. Besides this, he had also gained a skill that raised his strength by 20%. Then Essel and Amit bent down to look at Suho, and Amit promised him that what he was saying now was true, that Suho was the strongest human so far that he had seen. Back to the present, it seems Amit wasn't lying, because we can now see pieces of tentacles from Mormu flying through the air. And Mormu also looked like a statue, unable to move and just standing while losing his tentacles. Because of this, Mormu just shouted in disbelief, "What?" Then we just see Suho standing and holding the cut-off tentacles from Mormu. According to the system, Suho's strength stat was now at 120, and this was clearly visible in his glowing eyes. But he didn't just have strength, because he also had tremendous speed. He managed to give fast and powerful uppercuts and stomach punches to the Staghorn Demon and the Trihorn Demon simultaneously. And that was enough to immobilize the 2, so Mormu was greatly shocked when he saw what Suho did to them. After that, Suho again asked Mormu about the whereabouts of the Iterum Apostle as he approached Mormu face to face. Mormu was afraid and speechless because of this. But somehow, he still managed to muster up courage to tell Suho that he had no intention of answering, and he even managed to throw a punch. Suho just briefly asked Mormu, "Is that so?" before he grabbed his entire face using his right gauntlet. Then Suho pulled Mormu's head with such force that he managed to sever it from his body. Then, Suho equipped his dagger, named Kasaka's Venom Fang, in his left hand while still wearing Vulcan's horn. And using his skill Storm Slash, he rained many slices on Mormu's body. While Suho was still firmly holding Mormu's head, which was still alive, Mormu just thought that he felt a familiarity from the unnerving vibe coming from Suho. Then, from Mormu's point of view, he saw Suho as a frightening monster telling him that because he didn't want to talk, Suho would just extract the information from him. So Suho called Biru and threw Mormu's head up in the air. And while Mormu's head was still in the air, he just thought that he was regretful and sad because he wouldn't live to see the Apostle's plans to see the portrait he wanted to paint. But Mormu was still thankful and satisfied to die because the Apostle had helped their demons destroy the later household. And now, Biru was about to swallow his head whole, and this was Mormu's final moment. At the time Mormu died, Essel suddenly felt something from what happened, but she wasn't sure where that light feeling came from. Meanwhile, Biru was just happy and enjoying chewing Mormu's head. He even commented that the octopus he was eating was chewy. And while he was still busy chewing, Suho immediately asked him if he had any new information about the Iterum Apostle. Biru replied that he hadn't obtained much helpful information from Mormu's memories. All he learned was that Mormu was one of the demons who looked up to the Iterum Apostle as if he was worshipping him as a god and shining light. In Suho's mind, this was another dead end, and his only choice now might be to get information from Lee Minsung himself. But before facing Minsung, he said he needed to evacuate people from the dungeon first. Meanwhile, Teal also suddenly became uneasy because he felt a demon presence that had suddenly vanished. And he knew it wasn't the Hunter Association who had done this. Now, the entire strike team had reached the door gate of Payu Field's boss monster room that Lee Minsung was referring to. In Miho's mind, she was disappointed because she hadn't seen any incriminating evidence against Minsung as they walked here. She still believed there was a Stardust factory inside Payu Field. Minsung was happy and smiled because he noticed that Miho was confused by the lack of traces. Because of the successful hiding of the truth from Miho, Minsung just told Teal telepathically that they should cancel their plan to brainwash the hunters because it would also be better for them if the day ended without any issues. But Teal didn't seem happy with what Minsung said and also let him know that he didn't agree with this. While Miho was looking behind, she wondered if what she was looking for was hidden on an island. She also thought that maybe she just needed to check the place again after they defeated the boss monster. So, she led the raid party and said it was time for them to enter the boss monster room. But Minsung couldn't leave his position, extremely shocked and horrified. He just looked at Teal and asked him what he was doing. Teal's vision darkened at him and reminded him of what he had said before. Teal planned to convert all party members into followers. And it seemed Minsung was also on his list because Teal had stabbed him in the back with an Iterum yellow crystal made of purified stardust. And while the crystal was burying itself into Minsung's upper back, Teal explained that a person they chose to join their side needed to have a certain value. And it was really strange that he had encountered Minsung's proposal to the second fragment about an A-rank hunter's request to kill an S-rank hunter. Next, Teal suddenly approached Minsung's ear. He told him that he needed to use him to get close to Lim Taegyu. And when Minsung heard this, he was consumed by nervousness and fear. But he quickly gained courage due to his extreme anger when he heard Teal talk about S-rank hunters. Then he shouted at Teal in extreme anger that he wouldn't allow himself to be brainwashed by someone like him. But suddenly, he could no longer move, and when he looked up, he was shocked by what he saw. All he could do was stare at the intense light coming from the burning symbol of Iterum above him. And a voice was telling him to obey according to the Supreme One's wishes. Its presence overwhelmed Minsung's entire being, and he suddenly fell silent and his vision darkened as if he had lost his humanity. After this, Teal approached him to hold his shoulder as a gesture of approval and appreciation. And Teal just smiled with joy because what he wanted would still happen, especially now that an Iterum halo could be seen above Minsung's head, indicating he was now under Iterum's control. Teal's next plan was to brainwash his next target, Miho. Meanwhile, at the outskirts of Payu Field, we can see a black limo where Choi Jong-in is riding, holding a signal blue Firebird. According to him, Once it disappears, it would mean that the raid party inside is already in need of help because they are in a dangerous situation. Choi Jong-in was very impressed with this new system of communication using a summon of a summon, because it solved their problem of using devices that do not function properly once inside dungeons. However, Choi Jong-in told his companion that he was still hoping that they would not need to get involved in the raid inside the dungeon. Lim Taegyu glanced at him when he mentioned that he hoped Lee Min-sung would not cause more trouble for them. He also asked him if he was worrying about them. Taegyu did not respond to that, and instead asked Choi Jong-in if he was trying to provoke him. However, Choi Jong-in denied it. Taegyu then started getting annoyed and irritated at Choi Jong-in, so he teased him, saying that he probably just felt jealous because the newly appointed S-rank hunter, Park Dojin, chose the Grim Reaper Guild. Taegyu's teasing worked because it irritated Choi Jong-in, but he still managed to answer calmly, saying that it was not a problem for him because they already had a lot of talented hunters in their guild. In the end, Taegyu turned serious again because of the seriousness of the personal issue he was facing, and he could only let out a sigh. Then, he placed his hand on his cheek and looked downward, sweating heavily from worrying over Min-sung. He told Choi Jong-in that he could not believe that Min-sung turned out to be the main culprit behind the distribution and production of Stardust. He felt responsible for everything because he was the guild master of the Grim Reaper Guild and allowed this to happen. Next, he reminded Choi Jong-in about the promise he made, that he would not interfere with whatever Taegyu planned to do if he believed that he could still suppress the situation himself. Choi Jong-in replied that he would also be happier if Taegyu could succeed in doing that, because he genuinely did not like hurting other people. Meanwhile, inside the boss monster room, the current enemy of the raid party was a giant salamander that was breathing out intense fire. It was clearly visible on the faces of the mage, archer, and tank how much they were struggling to face it. And while the three of them were protecting themselves from the boss salamander's fierce attacks, we can see Lee Min-sung quickly running and charging straight toward the boss. Meanwhile, Miho was just observing from behind, looking at Teal, who had his arms crossed and was simply relaxing. Miho was getting irritated at him because he was just chilling while the others were fighting with all their might. And to make things worse, Park Dojin was acting all high and mighty like an S rank and was treating them like his subordinates even though they were his seniors. But aside from that, Miho also could not understand why. Ever since they entered the boss monster room, Lee Min-sung suddenly started fighting so intensely and going all out. On the other hand, Teal was happy with what he was seeing from Min-sung, and from this, he gained confirmation about the Stardust. Normal Stardust could only strengthen hunters from B rank and below, but if the condensed form called Star Fragments was used, it could even strengthen A rank hunters. And it was very evident from the extreme speed of Lee Min-sung's movements. He could quickly dodge the boss salamander's powerful attacks, and he would jump around it as if he were just playing with the enemy. He even managed to deliver numerous slashes to the boss salamander's arm with incredible speed. Miho was absolutely shocked by what she saw because she could not believe that Min-sung had become this strong. It was also clearly visible on the salamander boss that it was extremely enraged because of the wounds it had received. It then focused its attacks on Min-sung, trying to strike him head-on with a powerful blow. However, Min-sung managed to block it using his sword, although he was still pushed backward, skidding far across the ground. Seeing this, Teal thought that even with the awakening through a star fragment, it was still hard for an A-rank hunter to truly fight at the level of an S-rank. Because of that, Teal decided to move on to his next option and brought his fingertips together to activate a unique skill. One of the fragments from Teal's original form contained 5 unique abilities, and one of those abilities was called the Blessing of Amplification. Through it, Teal could amplify the unique traits of whoever he possessed. This ability worked by possessing the very faith of the Mistborn that was stored within the Stardust, as well as the weapon itself, and all of this he could amplify. Now, let us talk about Lee Min-sung's power. His unique trait was Magic Power Amplification, and the unique trait of the weapon he had equipped was Slash Power Amplification. Because of the amazing synergy of these traits and abilities, Teal became even more excited to see Min-sung's new power, so he spoke to him telepathically. He told him that he wanted to see the dream level of strength that Min-sung could reach after receiving his blessing. Due to the immense anger of the salamander boss, it charged straight at Lee Min-sung. who at that moment seemed somewhat out of it because of Teal's influence. It was also then that Teal told him that his current power was already equivalent to that of an S-rank hunter. Because of this, Minsung suddenly became fired up in the battle and got into a ready stance for a strong thrust attack. When we look at Minsung's eyes, we can even see that the symbol of Iterum was now engraved onto his iris, making it seem like he was already possessed. He then managed to deliver a super powerful, glowing thrust attack to the boss salamander, who was pouncing toward him. And with this S-class level strength, he was able to completely counter the pouncing motion of the boss salamander and even shattered the flooring with his attack. Choi Jong-in and Tae-gyu could not believe the intensity they felt from the attack Minsung had unleashed. Even Miho, who had been watching Minsung throughout the battle, was shocked by the final strike he delivered against the salamander boss. Miho, now filled with fear, stared at Minsung, who was just standing beside the corpse of the salamander boss without any trace of emotion on his face. After that, Teal approached and stood back to back with Minsung without saying a word. In Teal's mind, he realized how tremendous the fatigue caused by his amplification ability was whenever it was used on A-rank hunters or higher. Aside from that, he also realized that although Minsung temporarily reached a power level comparable to an S rank, that power was now completely depleted. Next, Teal spoke to Minsung, telling him that he was pitiful because he did not seem to have the capacity to be a vessel that could contain S-rank power. Upon hearing that, Minsung's eyes widened in anger, showing that he still had a connection to his own consciousness. The tank hunter and Miho then looked at the hole in the ceiling that had been created earlier by Minsung's attack. Miho started thinking about how it seemed impossible for someone like Minsung, an A-rank hunter, to have done that. Because of this, Miho began questioning if the information they knew, that Stardust was ineffective on high-ranking hunters, was even true. She then wondered aloud if there could be other stimulants being sold in the black market besides Stardust. But before she could think deeper, she was suddenly shocked when she saw Park Dojin getting stabbed from behind by none other than Lee Minsung himself, and the stab even pierced through his chest. Teal could not believe what Minsung did to him, and he looked mortally wounded because of it. Teal was filled with intense anger because he really did not expect something like that to happen. Then, Minsung suddenly spoke to him, reminding him of what he had told him earlier. Minsung said he would never allow himself to be brainwashed by someone like Teal. And while saying that, Minsung gave him a wicked smile along with a sharp, menacing glare from his now blood-red eyes. Teal, bleeding from the eyes due to his injury, could not do anything except listen to Minsung. Then, Minsung declared that he would be using the cursed power he had received for his own good. After that, Minsung yanked his sword from Teal's back, causing Teal's injured body to fall heavily to the ground. Everyone around who witnessed the scene was visibly stunned. The strike team hunters immediately prepared themselves to fight, ready to subdue Minsung. Miho shouted at Minsung, asking him how he could attack a fellow hunter, and questioned if he had gone insane because of using drugs. But in response, Minsung simply held his forehead, full of disappointment and frustration. He was irritated because in the end, he still ended up in a terrible situation. Minsung was sweating profusely, not only because of the stress from what had happened, but also because of the overwhelming number of voices that he was hearing inside his head. While trying to think of what to do next, Minsung realized that since there were S-rank hunters waiting for him outside the dungeon, if he did not escape immediately, it would be impossible for him to get out of this situation. And now that his fellow hunters inside were starting to chase and block him, he had no other choice but to make a quick escape. So, despite the pain and the various stresses he was suffering from, Minsung endured it and shouted loudly at the hunters around him, warning them not to get in his way if they did not want to die. Minsung then ran with overwhelming speed, easily bypassing Miho, the tank, the swordsman, and the archer. His movements were like lightning, and none of the hunters could do anything to stop him. In just an instant, they could only witness the intense pressure in the path that Minsung had broken through to escape. The tank ended up lying on the ground from exhaustion, while the archer and Miho both grabbed their arms in pain, injured by Minsung's quick attacks as he fled. Miho was extremely frustrated because of this, so she immediately ordered the archer, Lee Kyeol-sung, to send a signal to the S-rank hunters waiting outside. Kyeol-sung immediately obeyed Miho's order. Then, Miho was caught by surprise when she noticed that Park Dojin, who had suffered a major injury just seconds ago, somehow managed to get back up. Meanwhile, as Teal was performing healing magic on himself, he was just smiling because he was happy with the new discovery he had made, that as long as a person's mind was strong enough, they could resist the divinity of Mistborns, regardless of how much magic power they possessed. Miho quickly approached Park Dojin to ask him how he survived Minsung's attack when the stab had pierced straight through his heart. Suddenly, Park Dojin brushed aside his hair, and his eye gleamed with light. Meanwhile, Minsung was currently running through the forest at high speed, trying to get away. He said to himself how ridiculous his situation was, because even though he had obtained the power of an S-rank hunter, he now had to run away like a fugitive. He thought of hiding temporarily in a nearby city because he had no one he could rely on, no one he could run to for help. Not Iterum, not the Association, and not the Grim Reaper Guild. Then suddenly, from the sky, a dagger fell with immense force and embedded itself on the ground right in front of Minsung, causing him to stop in shock. He could not understand what it was or where it came from. Then from the shadows inside the forest, a man slowly walked toward him. The man mentioned that he was wondering where the huge explosion from the dungeon earlier came from. And aside from that, he did not expect Minsung to come out of there alone. It turned out that the man was Suho, and together with his frightening, dark aura, he demanded that Minsung tell him everything he knew about Stardust and the Iterum Apostle. Because of the shadow mask he was wearing, Suho was able to hide his identity from Minsung. But when Minsung heard the man mention his name, he became uncomfortable. What gave him even more discomfort was being asked about information regarding Stardust and the Iterum Apostle. He could not believe that someone else had somehow figured out that there was a connection between the two. As Minsung stared at Suho, who was now equipping his gauntlets and dagger, he recalled that the one who defeated Brokey and disrupted the supply of Stardust material was described as a man wearing a black mask. Minsung wondered if this could be that same man, and he began to sweat even more because of the opposition. But still, Minsung decided to attack Suho, who was blocking his way because he did not care about anyone else anymore. The only thing important to him now was not to get delayed in his escape, because otherwise he would surely be caught by the hunters pursuing him. Minsung quickly launched a thrust at Suho, believing that he would not have much trouble dealing with him because he could sense only a small amount of magic power from him. However, Suho remained completely calm. He easily caught Minsung's sword with his bare hand, as if it was nothing. Minsung could not believe what just happened and was completely shocked at Suho's speed. On top of that, Suho's grip was so strong that Minsung could not even pull back his own sword. Then suddenly, he received a powerful and quick high kick to the chin, and the impact could clearly be seen on his now bleeding face. Minsung was sure that Suho had far less magic power than he did, so he could not comprehend how Suho managed to do that to him. Meanwhile, Biru, who was peeking from inside Suho's coat, thought that Minsung's reaction was normal because the rank of a hunter was only based on their magic power, not on their overall strength. Biru knew this because he could sense a person's true strength, and it was confirmed by the current situation where we can see how much Minsung was struggling to block Suho's continuous attacks. According to Biru, as Suho's strength stat increased through his daily training quests together with Amit, his power only kept growing stronger and stronger. For an A-rank hunter, it was truly impossible to handle his strength. Meanwhile, back inside the dungeon, we can see the huge hole that Minsung had created earlier. Inside it, Miho could be seen along with the other hunters, all of them shocked and wondering how Park Dojin was still okay even after his heart had been pierced. Because of the dangerous and uncertain situation, Teal planned to use a yellow stone to try and mind control Miho so that he could escape the suspicions. However, Miho noticed this and started wondering what Teal was planning to do with the stone he was holding. But before things could escalate, they all heard the voices of new arriving hunters who were calling out for Miho and asking for a report about what had happened. Teal fell silent while Miho, on the other hand, became very happy to see that the newcomers were none other than Choi Jong-in and Lim Taegyu. Teal was extremely intimidated by the two of them, so he gave them a sharp look. Instinctively, he knew that he should not make any aggressive moves for now because he was unsure if he could handle fighting against two S-rank hunters. Choi Jong-in descended from the hole above and asked Miho where the sound of the powerful explosion earlier had come from. Miho answered him that it was Min-sung who caused it. Choi Jong-in was skeptical, unable to believe that an A-rank hunter could have that kind of skill. According to Miho, the amount of mana that Min-sung showed was immense, and it was obvious that he had taken some kind of stimulant. She added that because of the effects of the drug, Min-sung suddenly attacked Park Do-jin. Choi Jong-in was surprised when he saw that Park Do-jin still looked normal despite his injury. Meanwhile, Teal smiled while saying that he had a recovery skill. This piqued Choi Jong-in's interest in Teal's high-level recovery skill, but Miho was only stressed and panicked because she had to remind Choi Jong-in that they needed to quickly chase and capture Min-sung before he could hide in the nearest city. Choi Jong-in agreed with Miho's suggestion and asked Lim Taegyu if he heard what Miho said. Choi Jong-in also reminded Taegyu about the promise he made that if they found out that Min-sung was not innocent, he would not hesitate anymore. But Choi Jong-in was caught off guard when he looked back and realized that Lim Taegyu was no longer behind him. It seemed that Taegyu had already rushed ahead to chase after Min-sung, and this made Choi Jong-in nervous. Meanwhile, Teal felt an intense wave of anxiety because of how the situation was escalating. But luckily for him, his link to Min-sung had not yet been severed. He was even fascinated because a human like Min-sung had managed to resist the faith. There was a high chance that even if Min-sung confessed about the Iterum connection, those who would capture him might not believe him immediately. But Teal could not take that risk. He could not allow Min-sung to be interrogated because it would raise unnecessary suspicions toward him and might blow his cover. Miho ordered him to stay put in case he still was not feeling well because of his injury. Teal thought that he needed to follow the order for now, and he had no other choice at the moment but to get rid of Min-sung. Teal planned that even if it would consume a huge amount of divinity, he would still forcibly take over Min-sung's body so that Min-sung could kill himself. In Teal's mind, it would not be hard to find a replacement A-rank hunter anyway. But once Teal successfully connected with Min-sung's consciousness and senses, he was shocked by what he saw through Min-sung's vision, where it was clear that Min-sung was currently fighting. And judging by the struggle Min-sung was facing, it looked like his opponent was already an S-rank hunter. Teal could not believe it, and he became even more stunned when he realized that the one Min-sung was fighting against was the black-masked assailant who had killed Brokey. Teal began to wonder if Suho was also targeting Min-sung just like the association. He did not expect that he would meet the black-masked assailant today of all days. Besides that, so many things had happened in just a single day that he had not foreseen, like Min-sung's ability to resist the faith of the Mistborns. Ever since he arrived on Earth, nothing had gone according to plan. He pulled up the collar of his turtleneck shirt to cover his mouth, while thinking about how much everything had changed compared to the time when their god was still alive. But he could not understand why. Even though all of this spelled bad news for them, he could not help but smile and feel excited about what was happening. Let us return to the duel between Suho and Min-sung, where Suho was continuously raining attacks down on Min-sung, who could not manage to escape because he needed to carefully block and dodge every attack thrown at him. But since Min-sung knew that he could not afford to delay his escape any further, he decided to draw Suho's attention and talk to him first. Min-sung asked Suho if he would let him go if he answered his questions. Suho, a bit confused, asked what Min-sung meant by that, because based on his understanding, Min-sung was an ally of the Iterum Apostle. Min-sung explained with resentment and bitterness that the Iterum Apostle had backstabbed him. Suho became curious and wondered what kind of falling out had happened between the two. So he asked Min-sung why he helped the Apostle distribute the Stardust in the first place. Min-sung revealed to Suho that he helped the Iterum Apostle in exchange for a favor, specifically, to have someone killed. Min-sung said that ever since the day of the Great Cataclysm, everything he had built in his life had changed. One of those things was how a nobody, who had become an S-rank hunter because of the Cataclysm, was now looking down on him. All Min-sung wanted was to bring back his former life, and in order to achieve that, he needed to kill that person. After revealing his selfish intent, Min-sung then asked Suho if his goal was not to kill the alien he was looking for. Suho denied it and said that he would first attempt to resolve things peacefully through discussion before resorting to violence. Min-sung smiled in extreme anger and disdain upon hearing that. He asked Suho if he really had no intention of killing the alien whose plan was to invade the world. Minsung thought that people like Suho were the type he hated the most back in his actor days. Minsung's vision darkened as he released an intense aura full of rage. According to Minsung, people like Suho were overflowing with hope, but did not have even an ounce of real personality. Goodness and honor were merely choices offered by society and other people. As he insulted Suho, saying that he did not even know what he wanted in life, Suho responded by unleashing an aura just as intense as his. According to Minsung, if it were not for the power Suho gained, he would have remained an extra character for the rest of his life. The day would come when Suho would be forced to make a difficult decision in an impossible situation. And according to Minsung, he himself would be the one to create that situation for Suho right now. Now, as Minsung was about to reveal the identity of the Iterum Apostle to Suho, he was suddenly stopped from speaking, and he found himself inside his own subconscious, trapped within the grasp of two massive hands belonging to Teal. Teal had successfully taken over Minsung's body and prevented him from speaking any further. Next, Teal spoke to Minsung, thanking him because he had obtained so much valuable information and data thanks to him. Teal admitted that he was wrong when he previously called Minsung incompetent. Then, he declared that he would be using Minsung's body one last time. Minsung was shocked by what he heard and wondered what Teal was planning to do to him. But while Minsung was shouting that he would not allow Teal to do whatever he wanted to his body, Teal simply squeezed him tightly between his hands. The equivalent of this in the real world was that Minsung released a massive aura, almost like a super scion. Suho and Biru could both feel the intensity of the Iterum energy coming from Minsung, and they both knew that it was even stronger than the power they had previously felt from Brokey. Minsung's hair was glowing brightly from the transformation, and even his weapon, which was now engulfed in flames, had changed its form. Then behind Minsung, angel wings sprouted from his back. Suho had to cover his eyes because of the sheer brightness emanating from Minsung's transformation. Suho was then shocked when he heard Minsung speak, but it was clear that it was no longer Minsung who was talking. The angelified Minsung mentioned that he knew the black-masked assailant had attacked the Stardust Factory and had sought out Minsung in order to meet him, the Iterum Apostle. It was Teal himself speaking through Minsung's body, and he declared that he too was pleased to meet Suho. Minsung's appearance now looked like that of a golden angelic beast demon monster, and he was being remotely controlled by the consciousness of Teal. While the Teal-possessed angel Minsung was speaking to Suho, he pointed his sword at him. It was obvious that Suho was not welcoming the gesture in a friendly way. He could also feel that the person he was facing now was no longer Minsung. Based on what Minsung was saying, Suho realized that the one standing in front of him now was actually the Iterum Apostle, so he asked him if he was the apostle sent by their god from another world. Teal smiled at what Suho said and commended him for his knowledge about the existence of the Iterum. Teal pointed his sword at Suho again as he confirmed that Suho was correct, that he did indeed come to Earth with the intent to possess it. That was when Suho remembered his father and also realized that the Iterum were the reason his father still could not return to Earth. Because of this, Suho released an intimidating aura and began warming up his arms to prepare for battle. He told Teal that it was perfect timing that they had met here. But before the two could begin fighting, Lim Taegyu arrived and interrupted them with a powerful shout. Both Suho and the Teal-possessed Minsung flinched when Taegyu warned them not to make a single move without permission. Taegyu pointed his bow and arrow at both of them and said that if either of them tried anything, he would blast a hole through them both. Taegyu then angrily asked Minsung why he looked like that and what exactly he had done to himself to end up that way. He glared at both of them like a wolf waiting for a response. But Minsung remained silent, simply standing with his back turned to Taegyu, while Suho was left wondering why Taegyu was even here. Suddenly, Teal spoke and said that it seemed like the two of them would not be able to talk properly here. Suho became uneasy at how Teal said that. Teal then smiled at Suho and told him that they should just meet at the highest spot in this region. Taegyu noticed that the Teal-possessed Minsung seemed to be planning to escape, so he asked him where he was going. Taegyu reminded Minsung that he told him not to move without permission and immediately fired a magic arrow at him. Teal was able to notice and read the speed and trajectory of the arrow very well and easily dodged it. He even smiled as he dodged. Suho also managed to dodge the arrow that flew toward him right after. Next, Teal-possessed Minsung took flight, while Suho backed off for the moment, and Taegyu quickly crafted 3 magic arrows using his right hand and mana. He aimed all 3 arrows simultaneously at his targets, and upon release, they generated a powerful force that created a tornado-like path as they flew. The projectiles from Taegyu were incredibly fast and powerful, but the teal-possessed Minsung still managed to dodge them in midair with ease. When the arrows shifted towards Suho, he was also able to avoid them using his dexterity. While staying alert and dodging the attacks, Suho asked himself whether Taegyu was also planning to capture Minsung like he was. Biru then asked Suho if he was planning to counterattack. Suho replied that based on Taegyu's reaction, it seemed like he had nothing to do with the Iterum Apostle. But Suho's immediate concern now was the fact that Taegyu clearly had not yet shown them his full power. Taegyu, slightly irritated but impressed that both targets had dodged his arrows, commended them. He then declared that his top priority was to subdue Minsung, and that he had no concern at all for the other target, Suho. With that, Taegyu began charging up a large arrow that emitted a powerful and electrifying white aura, ready to fire it at the teal-possessed Minsung at any moment. Taegyu's expression darkened as he prepared to fire because the truth was that he never wanted to hurt Minsung. But he also realized that he had been too greedy in his desire to capture and bring Minsung back safely after everything. While in midair, teal-possessed Minsung began to feel nervous because of the overwhelming magic power he could sense from the magic arrow that Taegyu had prepared for him. He could feel in his body that it would be extremely dangerous to get hit by it. But before Taegyu could fire his arrow, he was suddenly distracted by a weak shadow magic power he sensed in front of him. It seemed like it was already dispersing by the time he noticed it. He quickly returned to his senses and re-aimed his shot. But instead of aiming at the sky, he suddenly found himself aiming at a goblin shadow that was standing in the bush area of the forest in front of him. The goblin scratched the back of its head, looking like it was about to cry, seemingly with no idea why it was even there or why Taegyu was targeting him. Taegyu asked himself what a goblin was even doing here. Then he cursed when he suddenly realized that he had been distracted for far too long, and when he looked behind him, the goblin shadow had vanished from the bush, and more importantly, Minsung was gone too, seemingly having escaped together with Suho. Only destroyed trees remained in the area. Taegyu could only feel disappointed in himself, and even more so in Minsung, because he still could not understand what Minsung was thinking or how he had ended up in such a disastrous situation. Next, inside the head office of the Hunter Association, we see Chairman Wu Jinshul receiving a phone call. As soon as it rang, he immediately picked up his phone on the table, as if he had been waiting for an update. From the person on the other end of the line, he learned that Lee Minsung had escaped. It was Lim Taegyu himself who reported this over the phone, and he mentioned that Choi Jong-in and Miho were now also in the forest. Taegyu first apologized before explaining to Jinshul that Minsung looked abnormal and that it might be due to the influence of drugs. Additionally, Taegyu reported that there was another unidentified hunter at the scene who was wearing a black mask. Choi Jong-in was surprised when he overheard Taegyu reporting this. Shocked, he suddenly shouted at Taegyu to ask if the black-masked person he was referring to was a close combat fighter. Taegyu, puzzled but in agreement, asked how Choi knew about that. Wu Jinshul, still on the phone, overheard Choi Jong-in explaining that he had seen a black-masked hunter during the recent airport dungeon break incident. According to Choi, the black-masked hunter had managed to single-handedly stop all the magic beasts that came out of the portal. Jinshul was deeply shaken by what he heard, and at first, he thought that Choi might be referring to Sung Jinwoo. He paused to contemplate because he could not believe that Jinwoo had finally returned after such a long time. But he was also certain that if it really was Jinwoo, the major issue they were facing now would have already been resolved. So Jinshul considered the possibility that the black-masked hunter they were referring to might actually be Suho. At the highest point of a mountain in the forest, we see that Suho has arrived and fulfilled the meeting with Teal-possessed Minsung at the summit of the tallest mountain in the area. Teal still pointed his sword at Suho, even though Suho had helped him escape from Taegyu. Teal didn't expect that from Suho, so he asked him why he did it. Suho responded by asking Teal if he didn't plan on abandoning Minsung's body once the situation became too dangerous for him. Teal said that he had already heard about Suho from the demons. They called him the Shadow Monarch from the darkness. So Teal asked Suho what his relationship was with the Monarch of Shadows. Suho simply replied that Teal was asking too many questions, and he didn't have to answer even one of them, because what Suho really planned to do was crush Minsung and extract information from him. Biru suddenly spoke up to give Suho a warning. According to him, they needed to be careful because Biru could no longer properly estimate Minsung's new power level now that he was possessed by the Iterum Apostle. Suho told Biru not to worry because he had already made preparations for this kind of situation. Then it happened. We heard Suho once again say arise. It was the first time he used it again after fighting with only his own strength for a while. Teal smiled as he watched Suho summon his shadows. From what he was seeing, Teal became more certain of Suho's identity. It was the same authority of darkness he had once seen on the battlefield. With the limited number of shadows Suho could summon simultaneously, he chose only the strongest monster shadows he had defeated from various dungeons in the past. One of them was the ruler of the swarm, Blue Kasaka Venom Fang. Next was the Poison Fang giant desert centipede. Then a high troll. And lastly, his strongest elite-grade shadow, Shika, the tomb's warden. Suho still used the shadow key to access the corpses of these monsters, which he had saved for this exact day. Then, he also equipped his favorite gauntlets and summoned Essel and Gray to use their bond skills. Suho said that now, he was using his full force for this battle. It was clear from the annoying smile on the face of Teal-possessed Minsung that he was excited. He remained unfazed and fired up to fight against Suho's full power. Suddenly, Suho received a new urgent quest from the system, and it had a simple objective: defeat Li Minsung, currently possessed by the Iterum Apostle, in order to obtain his memories. Because of this, Suho was now sure that winning this fight was important. He realized that, for the first time in his life, he might have to kill a person to complete a quest. So he prepared his dagger and aimed it at Minsung. Meanwhile, back in the Payu Field dungeon where Teal's original body was located, Teal was deep in thought. After coming to understand the various emotions of humans, he had begun to notice a strange feeling inside himself, a feeling where many changes were taking place. From the memories within one of the 3 fragments of his main body, he thought he now understood the feeling of facing the darkness. It was a feeling of curiosity toward a powerful person from another dimension who had managed to single-handedly stop the entire army of a whole dimension. He simply became curious about the darkness that looked lonely while standing alongside its army. Teal wondered if he would get the answer to his question from Suho, the one standing before him now. Blue Kasaka Venom Fang was the first to attack with tremendous force, charging at Minsung. But Minsung stood his ground unfazed. And as Venom Fang approached, Minsung easily deleted him with a single quick slash. He was even split down the middle from the mouth. As Venom Fang's body hit the ground, Minsung used his wings as a shield from the incoming pressure. Then, peeking through the gap in his wings, he saw that Suho was already standing in front of him. He was surprised to see Suho charging toward him with great speed and intensity in his eyes. But Minsung remained unfazed and blocked the strong left punch from Suho. Minsung hadn't expected that Suho would personally fight him and only use his shadow soldiers as support and distractions. He asked himself how confident Suho really was in close combat. Suho followed up with multiple punches, but Minsung still managed to block them. Finally, Minsung launched a counterattack after being on the defensive for a while, but Suho bent backwards and easily dodged the slash. Zooming out from the fight, we can see that Suho had 2 giant desert centipede shadow soldiers ready to support from behind, but both got hit by Minsung's wide attack. But unexpectedly, from the side, Essel quickly flanked Minsung's blind spot and attacked him with her spear. Minsung dodged it easily by just moving his neck. He also caught the spear near its head, and because both he and Essel were gripping it tightly, he lifted Essel into the air, dangling. Minsung quickly noticed that Essel was not one of Suho's shadow soldiers. Essel teared up in fear because of Minsung's intimidating presence, but she still managed to provide enough distraction for Suho to approach undetected and deliver a powerful flying left kick. Suho struck Minsung directly in the cheek, which also caused Essel to break free from Minsung's grip. Minsung felt the power of that attack, but it wasn't strong enough to knock him down. It only served to make him angrier. He asked Suho why he wasn't just relying on his shadow soldiers for the fight. Suho reflected on what Minsung said. then responded that if Minsung really wanted to see his shadow soldiers in action, he would show them to him. Minsung didn't expect that answer, so he braced himself for Suho's next move. But before he could react, he was already grabbed by the hands of Shika, the tomb's warden, Suho's elite-level shadow soldier. We then see Shika using sand magic to completely wrap Minsung. Minsung looked back to see where Shika was standing, and he could no longer move from his position, only glaring at Shika. While he was restrained, Suho prepared to attack and began charging power into his right-hand gauntlet. Thanks to his skill, it was second nature for Suho to use Ruler's authority to condense mana and energy into his attack, the power of which now manifested like liquefied electricity bending gravity. Minsung stood his ground with a nonchalant expression as the attack came. The explosive force of Suho's punch was so strong that even Shika was pushed back from holding Minsung. In Minsung's silhouette, we can see that he appeared to take the full force steadily. Even Suho wasn't immune to the intensity of his own attack and was pushed backward, skidding as a massive cloud of smoke filled the area. According to Suho, the thick smoke came from the sand explosion that had wrapped around Minsung. As the smoke dispersed, we see Minsung's blurry silhouette and the glowing left eye bearing the Iterum symbol. Teal-possessed Minsung said that in this fight, it seemed like he wouldn't be able to feel the same sense of exhilaration that he once had. Then, Suho suddenly received a surprising slash attack from Minsung. And just like the speed Minsung had shown during his escape at the Payu Field dungeon, we saw it again here. After slashing Suho, he broke Essel's spear and sliced the High Troll Shadow Soldier in half. Essel took a deep wound to her shoulder from the attack, and the High Troll screamed in pain from being split. Suho was stunned by what just happened and couldn't hide the fear and anxiety in his eyes. Minsung stood still, disappointed with the battle, treating it like child's play. Teal-possessed Minsung explained to Suho that the soldiers of darkness he had seen before under the Shadow Monarch were veteran warriors who each had their own will. When fighting the Shadow Monarch's army, you would feel like you were facing a trained military force. The power Suho possessed was similar to that. However, Teal said that Suho's ability could also be considered completely different. We then see that Essel was no longer in condition to fight, and it also looked like Suho's current strength was not enough to win this battle. Minsung told Suho that even he couldn't believe that someone who possessed the same authority as the Monarch of Shadows had no capability to win this fight. According to Minsung, Suho was far too weak. Because of this, Suho took a moment to contemplate during the battle. He was frustrated by how much stronger Minsung had become since being possessed by the Iterum Apostle. Now, Minsung's strength could truly be compared to an S rank. Minsung rushed towards Suho, who remained in a defensive stance. While attacking, Minsung told Suho that the reason the darkness of the Shadow Monarch seemed so lonely was because there was no other existence in the universe capable of standing up to his power. According to Minsung, no one could ever understand someone who was overwhelmingly strong. Suho thought about Minsung's words as he continued blocking the attacks using his gauntlets. He couldn't believe that, according to Teal, his father seemed lonely. After several consecutive blocks using Vulcan's horn, it suddenly began to crack, and before long, it shattered into pieces. A system notice confirmed that it had completely broken. Now with no means to block, Suho was immediately stabbed by Minsung's sword in the chest. Suho coughed up blood from the blow, and Essel screamed out in desperation from afar. From Teal's original body, we could see in his eyes the disdain he held for Suho. He said that since Suho had no idea about the true power he possessed, he planned to steal the authority of darkness from him. While Suho endured the pain and tried to pull the sword out of his chest, Teal mentally laid out his plan to convert Suho into a believer so he could do everything necessary to obtain Suho's power. Once he stole it, Teal believed he would finally understand the feeling of darkness the way the Shadow Monarch had. Still struggling to remove the blade from his chest, Suho thought about what Teal-possessed Minsung had told him earlier regarding his lack of understanding of his own power. He then remembered the things Minsung had told him before being possessed, how he lacked personality and the courage to make difficult decisions. This led Suho to ask himself if there was something else he needed to become stronger, other than stats and skills. We now go into a flashback where we see Biru eating popcorn while watching TV with Suho in his living room. Biru asked Suho why he didn't use his shadow-transformed weapons. Suho explained that it was because the attack power stat of Vulcan's horn was higher than that of the shadow weapon. On top of that, Suho said it was already too taxing for him to fight while using his bond skill, ruler's authority, and at the same time commanding his shadow soldiers. He wasn't confident whether he could still manage to use a shadow-transformed weapon alongside all of those. Biru responded by saying that he was sure Suho could use it effortlessly because he was a genius. But Suho said it was fine even if he never used the shadow-transformed weapons. He further explained to Biru that one more reason was because of what Biru had told him before, that his father never used shadow transformation in battle. Suho believed that his father had a reason for not using it, and that nothing different would happen even if he tried otherwise. Biru was left speechless and said that if that was what Suho believed, then there was nothing more he could say. In a consciousness imagery, we see Suho holding a pencil and drawing on a canvas. He asked himself when he had started defining the limits of his own abilities. He wondered if it came from the habit of compromising every time he failed back in the days before he awakened. As he reflected, Suho realized that it had been a long time since he had last drawn a picture after becoming an awakened. It used to be a hobby he truly loved. Then Suho remembered what Min-sung had told him, that he didn't even know what he truly wanted. And unfortunately, Suho believed that. In the image of the pencil snapping in half, Suho thought to himself that he was leaving his reunion with his father and his eventual meeting with his missing mother to the system once he reached a sufficient level of strength. He admitted to himself that the reason he wanted to grow stronger was because he never truly saw any strength inside himself. He also asked himself why, from the very beginning, he had been trying to follow in his father's footsteps, when what his father really needed wasn't just a copy of himself. Then, in the image of his hand putting the pencil back together, ready to draw again, Suho thought to himself that his conviction was now solid, to find the one thing that only he could do. Back in the present reality, we see a bloodied Suho forcing his right hand upward and uttering the word "arise," even while still impaled by Min-sung's sword. This reminded Min-sung that shadow soldiers were immortal and could return even after dying, even in the middle of battle. As Min-sung saw the shadow soldiers reappearing, he said that no matter how many times they attacked him, they would never be a match for him. Meanwhile, in Teal's true body, we see a look of genuine shock mixed with curiosity as he witnessed something for the first time, the fusion of shadow soldiers with one another. He couldn't believe that what he was now up against was a chimera. It was clearly a unique new shadow soldier creature, a literal fusion of Sheikah, the High Troll, the Centipede, and the Serpent. Essel was shocked as she saw Gray suddenly separate from his bond skill with Suho. Meanwhile, the bloodied Suho continued to push forward, forcing himself to stay conscious and keep fighting. To understand Suho's feelings, let us go to a flashback during a Christmas season when Suho was still a child and walking around the city with his parents, Sung Jinwoo and Cha Hae-in. Suho happily shouted to his parents that he wanted to become a police officer when he grew up. Jinwoo let out a surprised "huh" at what his son said, so Suho explained that it was because his dad looked so cool. Suho asked if he could become a police officer, and if not a police officer, then maybe an athlete like his mom. He then asked if he became an athlete, would he also become strong like his mom? At first, his parents couldn't give him an answer, but when he asked his mom if it was okay for him to dream of those things, she smiled and patted his head. Cha Hae-in told Suho that ever since he was born into this world, she and her husband had already made a decision together. And that decision was to never interfere with Suho's dreams or what he wanted to do in life. Suho was free to do whatever he wanted. Suho just pouted upon hearing this from his mom. He said the reason was because he wanted to be strong and cool like his mom and dad. His mom happily told him that if that was what he truly wanted, then he was also free to pursue that. But her only reminder was that he should always ask himself first if he was sure of what he wanted. Back to Suho's present consciousness, he wondered why those words his mother once told him suddenly came back to him. But more importantly, Suho realized that at a certain point in his life, he had suddenly stopped asking himself if he actually liked what he was doing, and instead he simply kept chasing after his father. In a later flashback, we see Suho's teacher, Lim Dog-yeon, who was amazed by the ant drawings Suho had made during an art class. Dogyan told Suho that a person's drawing skills wouldn't grow if they only kept drawing the same thing over and over. Suho agreed and showed Dogyan that if he looked closely at his drawings, there were slight differences among them. Dogyan said that Suho's drawings were truly special. Suho was puzzled by his words and wondered if he was being sarcastic. As Dogyan looked at the beautiful drawings of various ants, he said that it was typical for an artist to get stuck in a pattern when drawing the same thing repeatedly. But in Suho's case, he seemed to become even freer the more he drew. This was clearly seen in one of Suho's iterations that caught Dogyan's attention. Dogyan even asked if Suho could still call that one an ant, since its appearance looked monstrous and demonic, and it was even engulfed in flames. Back again to Suho's present consciousness, he realized that the reason he might have obtained the shadow form change ability faster than his father was because the system matched that ability to his personal traits. And while Suho was still impaled by Minsung's sword, he screamed in his mind that he would no longer reject the combat style that utilized shadow form change. From now on, Suho would no longer be restricted to a fixed form of combat. Instead, he would draw out an unbound shadow. So Suho's next move using the power of shadows was to manipulate the shadows of his shadow soldiers and pull them into his own body. We could see on Minsung's face that he didn't understand what was happening. Biru was completely shocked by this unusual phenomenon, and even he was affected by the pulling force of the shadows heading towards Suho. Because of this, Biru was starting to have trouble maintaining his form. Frightened, he flew over to Essel, who caught him. Essel asked what was happening to their young monarch. Before answering, Biru calmed down because he was now feeling better. He told Essel that he also didn't really understand what was happening to Suho, but whatever it was, he was sure that Suho was breaking out of his shell in this scenario. Now that Suho had absorbed many shadows into his body, he once again released an aura. Minsung pondered deeply, wondering if Suho really had some latent potential hidden inside him. Minsung thought this could be dangerous for him, so he decided he needed to bring Suho to a near-death state quickly so he could immediately administer a star fragment to him. But Minsung was shocked when, unexpectedly, a sharp shadow spike rapidly shot toward his neck. It turned out to be a shadow spike from Suho himself, which had solidified into a deadly weapon. But Minsung reacted quickly and managed to block and shatter the spike with his sword. He was also forced to back away, and finally, Suho was freed from being impaled by Minsung. As he flew through the air, Minsung frowned and wondered if the information he had about Earth Hunters being unable to grow in ability was wrong. He questioned whether what happened to Suho now was a reawakening. Then we see that using the very power of shadows, Suho healed the large wound on his chest caused by Minsung's impalement. Next, we see that from behind Suho, he was now releasing an aura with a unique, clean sharpness. In his eyes, we could see his focus as he activated the shadow form change ability to form a full left arm shoulder brace and shadow gauntlet combo. Based on how cool it looked, it seemed like the inspiration came from the power of Sheikah's shadow. We then see Sheikah himself behind Suho, still present and supporting the fight. It looked like the individuality of Suho's shadow soldiers remained intact even after he used their bodies for shadow form change. Suho still didn't fully understand the power of shadows or his new ability. Maybe it was just a simple weaponization of the shadow soldiers, but due to the traits of the shadows that allowed transformation, it seemed like Suho could apply this ability in various methods. Venom Fang attacked Minsung again, and this time it looked like his speed had improved. But it still wasn't enough, because Minsung once again sliced Venom Fang in half from the mouth. After that, the High Troll attacked from Minsung's rear flank. The High Troll delivered a powerful smash, but he was surprised to find that Minsung had caught and stopped his spiked club with ease. Because of this, Minsung asked Suho if he had already forgotten that he had told him earlier that his shadow soldiers were no match for him. Then Minsung unleashed multiple super-fast simultaneous slashes at the High Troll, who practically vanished from the sheer damage he received. But after that, Minsung suddenly froze because of a strange power he sensed coming from Suho, who was walking toward him while absorbing shadows from somewhere. These shadows were red and layered themselves over Suho's shadow gauntlet, giving it an additional effect. Suho said that if what he was about to do still didn't work, then this fight was definitely over. We then saw that this power came from Essel, and that she and Suho were now using their bond skill, Demon Strike. In the blink of an eye, Suho suddenly disappeared from where he was standing, and the ground below was shattered from the force of his jump. Suho charged at Minsung in the air with incredible speed. From Teal's true body, he thought that Suho's incoming attack definitely carried dangerous mana, but he was confident that he would never get hit by an attack that obvious. So Teal-possessed Minsung simply counterattacked with his multi-slash attack before Suho could reach him completely. Suho was wounded by the strike, and not only was he hurt, it seemed Minsung had successfully stopped him. Because of this, Teal became overconfident and remarked that Suho could probably still use his authority skill even if he lost a leg. At first glance, it looked like Suho had lost consciousness, but he suddenly said, "Wow," upon realizing that what he was currently trying to do with shadow form change was actually working. Now, behind Minsung, Sheikah was there, and he was the one wielding the bond skill, Demon Strike. Minsung had no way to react, and he was caught completely off guard, so the attack landed directly on his cheek, and the sheer force of the strike shattered his teeth. He was sent flying at an incredible speed, and a huge portion of the mountain he crashed into was destroyed. After the smoke cleared from the rubble, we saw the aftermath of Suho and Essel's bond skill impact. The entire area was in ruins. From Teal's true body, we saw that he was now bleeding and in disbelief at what Suho had done. It was the first time he had witnessed the use of authority to transfer a skill to a shadow soldier. Teal wanted to speak to Suho using Minsung's body, but he couldn't anymore because it looked like Minsung's jaw had been completely destroyed. Minsung's body could still move, so Teal decided to squeeze out what little life force was left to replenish some mana so he could continue fighting. But then, Teal was suddenly shocked because Minsung's consciousness was beginning to awaken, and little by little, he was taking back control of his own body. Teal realized this happened because of the impact from Suho's earlier attack. He couldn't believe it, and Minsung even mocked him within his own consciousness. Minsung asked Teal what it felt like to be outdone by someone lower ranked as an S rank. Teal was completely pissed off and warned that if Minsung didn't stop, he would regret it. But Minsung simply asked Teal back what he planned to do to him. Was he going to kill him? Minsung asked if Teal really thought he was afraid to die. Minsung explained that the only thing he hated was being looked down on and not having his existence acknowledged. And as he crushed open his own chest, Minsung said that if ever he had the chance to give people who underestimated him a taste of their own medicine, he would definitely take it. Then Minsung's eyes widened in surprise when he saw Suho approaching him. Since he could no longer speak, he simply welcomed Suho within his thoughts and said that even if he wasn't the protagonist of the story, he would faithfully perform the role assigned to him. Now that Minsung had successfully shattered his own chest armor, he smiled at Suho with intense aura and mentally shouted that this was his final role as the villain. From Minsung's own point of view, we saw that Suho had already charged a powerful punch, and not long after, the final attack landed, an attack that Minsung had prepared to take head-on. The force of the strike was massive, and its impact tore through the mountain behind Minsung. Because of this second powerful punch from Suho, Teal seemed to have completely lost control of Minsung, and his body was slowly returning to its normal form while still being held by Suho, whose fist was now lodged through Minsung's torso. The outer shell covering Minsung's face had been shattered as well, exposing the real skin on his face. Minsung tried to speak again, but no matter how hard he tried, his jaw was too damaged to let him utter a word. He was deeply saddened by this, because on top of the terrible condition he was already in, having a hole in his stomach, he also couldn't say his last words. As blood continued to drip from his body, Minsung mentally said that on the day he met the Iterum Apostle, he thought it was an opportunity to change his fucked up world. He didn't expect that his ending would just turn his life into something even more fucked up, ever since the Great Cataclysm. Then suddenly, Minsung had a flashback to the moment when Lim Taegyu had invited him to form a guild, reaching out to him with a sincere smile. He wondered why that memory was what came to him at the end. Minsung's hatred returned, and he used what little strength he had left to raise his right hand as if to respond to the vision of Lim Taegyu. Though angry, and saying that Taegyu should not look down on him from above, he still reached out to him. And in the end, what remained in his mind was the rage of not wanting to be looked down upon, because he was the superstar, Lee Minsung. Then suddenly, Minsung was shocked to see Suho looking at him with what seemed to be pity. But those were Minsung's final thoughts, because at that moment, he died. The system confirmed it. Suho received experience points and leveled up again, and his urgent quest, which required him to kill Minsung, was now complete. Suho slowly laid Minsung's body down on the ground and kneeled beside it for a long time. Biru, Essel, and Gray approached Suho to celebrate, because he had successfully overcome a powerful adversary. But Suho ignored them, only staring sadly at Minsung. Suho asked them if he was right in thinking that the one who smiled at the end was Minsung, not the Iterum apostle who had possessed him. Then Suho said that even if he and Minsung didn't have a very deep conversation, he was sure that Minsung was the kind of person who was devoted to his own desires in life. Biru thought that Suho was saying all this because it was the first time he had killed a human and that he might be in shock. Then Suho told them that there was one thing he realized, thanks to Minsung. Ever since Suho became a player who could level up, he had only two purposes in life. First, to find his mother, and second, to become a hunter capable of helping his father. Suho realized that he had no dream for himself, and that might be what Minsung saw in him, which is why he had told Suho that he didn't even know what he wanted. Suho suddenly remembered a part of his tutorial experience, when he fought against his own father. He had felt awe toward his father at that time because he had witnessed the next level of the Shadow Monarch's power. His desire was to reach the same level of strength. But along with the awe, he also felt genuine frustration because he desperately wanted to win that battle. Suho stood up and looked at the sunset, while Essel, Gray, and Biru watched him. He said to them that there was something he needed to tell them. Suho knew that at some point in his life, he had just suddenly felt that his father was so far away from him. His father had become so great in his eyes that he couldn't even imagine being able to reach that level of power. He asked the three if it wasn't a good thing to have big aspirations. As he pointed to the sky, Suho told the three of them that as he grew stronger, he also wanted to become the strongest around. Then Suho declared that he would surpass the Iterum apostle, the monarchs, and even his own father, and that this was the dream he had now chosen for himself. At first, Baru and Essel were speechless and just stared at Suho. Then Baru said that even if the goal was impossible to achieve, he would still support Suho. Essel said that surpassing the Shadow Monarch's power was too difficult a goal. Suho sarcastically thanked the two of them because they ruined his good mood. But Suho thought that their reaction was only natural, so he checked the system to see what rewards he had received from the recent battle. Because Suho had leveled up several times, he had now reached the required level to receive an advancement quest from the system. The system immediately asked if he wanted to accept it. Suho thought about it and realized that a player could receive an advancement quest once they reached level 40. His stats had already risen significantly since the last time we saw his status window. And now that he was level 40, he could finally obtain a job class. Then we see that Suho was actually still being watched by Teal from afar, almost telepathically. And the moment Teal pinpointed Suho's exact location, he instantly flew to the mountaintop where Minsung had died. Teal used 4 angelic wings, which allowed him to fly there at incredible speed. His head still ached, and he regretted underestimating Suho's potential during their earlier fight using Minsung's body. Because of this, Teal became even more determined to convert Suho into a believer. One of the authorities that Teal had gained while gathering his fragment was the scale of equivalent exchange. This ability allowed him to exchange something that belonged to him for another thing of equal value. And at that moment, it seemed he had chosen 2 hunters to target. Suddenly, the eyes of the 2 hunters widened. They turned out to be believers because they had previously consumed stardust, so Teal was able to use their life force and convert it into mana. The 2 were simply unlucky, as were the other hunters nearby, because they were the closest to where Teal was. Teal used the mana from them to replenish his own mana and strength. Because of that, Teal now had enough energy again to target Suho with his magic bow and arrow, using the magic arrow as a delivery device for a star fragment. He smiled confidently, knowing he would get what he wanted from Suho. Meanwhile, Biru was speaking to Suho, salivating probably because of the idea of consuming another corpse. Biru told him that he would handle finding information about the Iterum apostle from Minsung's memories by consuming his corpse. Suho was willing to wait. Suho's thoughts were still deep about Minsung. He wondered if Minsung had really become that angry about the state of the world after the Great Cataclysm. Then Suho compared Minsung's situation to his own as a player. But Suho's thinking was suddenly cut off due to a surprise attack from behind. Teal's strike pierced through Suho's torso, successfully delivering a star fragment into his body. Suho was utterly shocked. Even Essel, Biru, and Gray couldn't believe how fast it happened. Suho looked back to see where and who the attack had come from, and his face immediately went pale. Teal was at just the right distance in the air, far enough to avoid being easily detected by Suho or Biru, which is why his snipe was successful. He smiled confidently now, knowing that the star fragment was already beginning to do its job inside Suho's body. Suho screamed in pain and collapsed to the ground from the sheer intensity of pressure inside his body, where we saw that even his own authority of shadows was resisting the foreign object. On top of that, a foreign consciousness had entered his mind, which his brain was also fighting against. While this was happening, the system was also doing its job. Using Suho's passive effect, longevity, which granted immunity to this kind of anomaly, the system tried to purge the influence of the star fragment from Suho's body. However, the passive effect failed. So longevity analyzed the anomaly first. It discovered that this was similar to the mistborn infection Suho had previously encountered. The system attempted to purge it again and again, but all efforts were unsuccessful until the system itself began to destabilize. After so many failed attempts, it looked like Teal had succeeded in his goal to obtain the authority of darkness. But then Teal was stunned to see that Suho's transformation into a believer had suddenly stopped halfway. The full analysis from the system had finally arrived in time, and Suho's longevity passive effect successfully reversed the effect of the star fragment. The system began restoring both itself and Suho's body from the incident. The three immediately rushed to Suho, deeply worried about him. Suho was still sweating from the stress he had just gone through, but he was content that longevity had managed to save him. Now, what he had to do was use his shadows to cover up his injuries. Essel, Biru, and Gray were crying as they watched Suho, weakened and close to death, with his remaining HP steadily dropping. As an emergency solution, Suho pressed the Yes button on the system to immediately accept the advancement quest that had been offered earlier. It activated instantly, and a portal appeared in front of him. The system said that only the player Suho could enter, and that the portal would bring the other heirs of monarchs into the Shadow Dungeon. Essel stopped crying for a moment when she saw this. As for Teal, he was baffled by what he had just witnessed. Suho had no other choice, so he entered the portal. The surroundings were pitch black, and he couldn't see anything. At first, he even thought he might be dead, but because he could feel the warmth of fire and the pain in his stomach had vanished, he knew he was still alive. Then, suddenly, a blue torch lit up on a wall, confirming to Suho that he was indeed fine. But he was shocked upon recognizing the place where he had been transported. Not only that, his wounds had fully healed. But more importantly, the tunnel Suho had entered through the advancement quest portal was extremely familiar to him. The portal that appeared at the mountaintop where Suho and Minsung fought had vanished. And since Suho and his companions were no longer there either, Teal descended from the sky to approach Minsung's corpse, which was lying on the ground. Teal couldn't believe that just moments ago, so much had been happening around him, but with the appearance of one gate, all the magic in the surroundings had disappeared, and Suho along with his soldiers were gone too. However, Minsung wasn't among those taken by the gate. Teal interpreted this to mean that the gate only chose to take Suho and his allies, the darkness and the black masks. Teal simply smiled in delight and excitement, realizing that every time he encounters them, something unexpected always happens. They were extremely interesting to him. Back inside the tunnel where the system transported Suho for his advancement quest, we see him sweating as he warms up by doing a one-hand stand. Suho noticed that not only were his injuries healed, but his body had also been restored to peak condition. And if there was any problem now, it was his current lack of access to his bond skills. So he stood up to check the system and confirm if he really couldn't access them. And he was right. Another thing he was right about was that the place he was in now was the same location where his tutorial experience took place. His father himself had created this dungeon for his training. The strong version of Suho who grew powerful in that place was not the current him, but he still possessed all the memories of that version. Suho now wondered why no knights had shown up to fight him yet, and why there were no weapons provided either. Unlike before, he suddenly missed his Vulcan's horn, which Minsung had just destroyed earlier. He was also puzzled because the system wasn't giving him any quest details. Was he really supposed to clear all the floors again with no weapon or bond skill at all? Beyond that, Suho realized that the place now had maze-like passages. The visual layout was still familiar, but he could sense something different. He noticed there were distortions occurring in certain parts of the place, like a blue flame torch hanging on the wall beside him. After walking a bit further, he was suddenly startled to find a special-looking door embedded in the wall along the length of the tunnel. Suho asked himself why the placement of the boss room door felt so random. He could have kept walking further down the path. He scratched his head, thinking the design of the advancement quest seemed careless, whoever made it. Nevertheless, he still had a small sense of anticipation, and that alone was enough to convince him to push the door open. Suho hoped that if he could complete this advancement quest, he'd emerge from this dungeon with the same power and strength he had gained from the original tutorial that happened here. He still remembered the appearance of the knight he had fought during that tutorial. That was the very first enemy he encountered in this place. And as he walked deeper into the boss room, his surroundings grew darker. But at the very end of the room, he noticed a person sitting on a throne, and it didn't resemble the knight. The figure Suho was about to face stood up, and Suho was completely shocked as he got closer. Now, a standoff was happening between the two combatants, and the one Suho would face was none other than himself. But even more terrifying, the Suho standing before him was the version of himself who had grown strong in this very place during the tutorial. And if we observe closely, that version of Suho resembled Sung Jinwoo even more, especially in his shadowy aura and purple gaze. Suho began to sweat from fear and anxiety at the thought of facing tutorial version Suho, remembering that version was strong enough to defeat even Baru at full power. Tutorial Suho began to act, charging his power aura. He looked directly at Suho and unleashed a powerful force with just one stomp on the floor, causing the ground to crack as the energy spread. Then suddenly, Suho was hit with an extremely fast and powerful attack, so fast and overwhelming that he couldn't say or do anything. His body was utterly obliterated, and we see that tutorial Suho had already passed by him. Suho hadn't even seen him charge. Now we see 3 blue flame torches standing side by side, and the first flame suddenly went out. Suho then revived completely in the exact condition he was in when he first entered this place. But he was still in shock, recalling everything. He saw himself in the middle of a circular room and realized this was the spot where he respawned after dying earlier. Suho asked himself why he ended up in the boss room. He didn't believe that the advancement quest would require him to defeat his tutorial version self, because that was simply impossible for him. But after worrying, he realized he shouldn't be afraid. The system existed for his growth, and if he needed to defeat tutorial Suho, then he believed there must be a way for him to succeed. Unlike the tutorial, the dungeon now had many pathways, and since the boss room's location was so odd, there was a possibility that he could find other doors. So he kept running and exploring, and after some time, he was glad to confirm that his hunch was correct. He found another door leading to a different boss room. At first, Suho hesitated to enter, but he steeled himself and told himself nothing could be worse than facing his tutorial version. So he went inside, and was surprised to see many toys scattered around the room. He was facing another past self, this time his baby version. But even this baby version was terrifying, especially when it suddenly stared at him. Suho couldn't understand what was going on in this dungeon and why he kept encountering different versions of himself. He couldn't believe that his baby version was radiating such an intimidating aura, and he didn't want to fight a child. But Suho had no idea that he had already been a prodigy of ruler's authority since childhood, and baby Suho used that very power against him. Suho couldn't move, left with no choice but to watch as all the toys around him were animated by baby Suho's ruler's authority while the baby version himself floated. Eventually, Suho realized that baby Suho was using the same power to paralyze him. A simple flick of baby Suho's finger was all it took for Suho to be overwhelmed by the spinning force of ruler's authority until his vision went black and another blue flame torch was extinguished, reviving him again. Suho realized he had just been insta-killed by his baby version, via a neck snap. Fear consumed Suho. He couldn't think of a way to clear this dungeon if he couldn't defeat either of his past versions. And to make matters worse, he suddenly remembered that he had received a total of 3 lives back during the tutorial. And since he had already respawned twice, this was now his last life. But he couldn't be more wrong. In truth, there were countless lit torches on the walls. Zooming out from Suho's POV, we see that tens of thousands of torches were lit along the circular wall surrounding him. Suho couldn't believe it. His honest thoughts about this were that it was utterly ridiculous. We also see distortions occurring on each torch, and according to the system, there was currently anomalous interference being experienced here due to a foreign material. At last, the system revealed to Suho that he must defeat the being inside the door before he runs out of lives, and he couldn't leave without doing so. Suho was unsure whether having this many remaining lives was a good thing. He understood that there was no way to level up in this place. His current situation still felt entirely unfair, so he questioned whether his quest had become like this due to a system error. And if that were the case, there was no guarantee the torches accurately represented his number of lives. Still, he wouldn't give up easily, knowing he had no choice but to move forward. So Suho continued exploring the dungeon with its unpredictable pathways and random boss room doors. He believed there was a high chance that many more boss rooms existed aside from the 2 he had encountered. The only problem was that he had no idea how big or wide the maze dungeon truly was. Fortunately, Suho wasn't under any time pressure, so he was happy not to rush himself. But then he suddenly stopped, sensing something to his right. Looking more closely, something emerged from the shadows. Clawed fingers, or so it seemed. But it wasn't a hand, it was a small dinosaur. But then again, it wasn't a dinosaur, it was just a toy. More toy companions appeared, a rocking horse and a little drummer boy, all controlled by baby Suho using ruler's authority. The toy dinosaur even appeared to glare at Suho, just like baby Suho, who now wore a creepy smile while drawing on a page he tore from his notebook. Looking closer, baby Suho was drawing a beheading of OG Suho. Baby Suho laughed loudly, but OG Suho didn't find it cute. He froze in fear, wondering how baby Suho had ended up here. Suho couldn't believe baby Suho had escaped the boss room and was now loitering in the corridor. The boss room's sealed door seemed useless. Suho started running in panic, his face showing clear terror. But before he got far, a projectile flew at such speed that it obliterated his left knee. Suho panicked even more, especially as he felt the intense pain. He collapsed, and baby Suho began charging at him. The projectile was the very same baby dinosaur toy, thrown by baby Suho. It hit Suho's knee right at the mouth of the toy, making it look like a real baby dinosaur monster. Suho couldn't believe ruler's authority could move an object that fast, and even more so that his baby version could wield it. While Suho was busy worrying how he'd clear this dungeon, an adult male appeared, walking toward him. It was none other than tutorial version Suho. OG Suho had been so focused on baby Suho that he hadn't even sensed the arrival of tutorial Suho, who was now radiating an intense aura. They stared into each other's eyes as tutorial Suho looked down on the terrified OG Suho. Suho couldn't speak at first, and eventually commented on how insane his situation was. One electrifyingly powerful and quick high right kick from tutorial Suho decapitated OG Suho. In frustration, Suho smashed his fist into the wall after respawning. He held his forehead in anxiety, unable to believe how difficult his quest was. Now there were 2 super powerful bosses roaming the corridors. It felt like he was fighting cheaters. He then wondered whether his father had ever experienced an advancement quest like this. That question reignited Suho's spirit, and he smiled with renewed excitement. Then, he had a bright idea. The quest condition said he must defeat the being inside the room. That meant he didn't have to beat tutorial Suho or baby Suho. He just needed to find another room referenced by the quest notice while avoiding the 2 roaming bosses. So he continued exploring. But every time he encountered tutorial Suho, he was obliterated in one strike. And whenever he faced baby Suho, he'd lose limbs and be tortured in pain. Suho endured these over and over, telling himself it was fine to die repeatedly since he had practically infinite lives. He believed that as long as he kept trying to reach his goal, he would eventually succeed and find the true final boss room. But after hundreds of attempts, his blood splattering on walls, floors, and in the air. He began to wonder if what he was doing was going anywhere. He asked himself, what if, due to a system error, there really was no other boss room? Suho sat on the floor, lost in thought. The combination of his infinite lives, the unbeatable enemies, and being in a place with no way to level up. Wasn't this just real hell? That made him remember the promise he had made to himself. One he had even declared in front of Baru, Essel, and Gray, that his plan in life was to keep growing stronger until he became the strongest. Suho grew angry at himself for remembering that. He bit his lip hard enough to draw blood. He told himself that his own words had shackled him, forcing him to move. Then, he took the blood from his mouth using his left thumb and smeared it on the floor. It seemed he had something planned to draw there. And as he steeled himself mentally, he vowed to do everything he could. Meanwhile, in the outside world, an emergency broadcast was being aired across the city due to recent events. The news reported that the Hunter Association had officially banned the use of the Hunter awakening drug known as Stardust. Once famous for being a side effect-free awakening drug, Stardust had become very popular among hunters. But it was recently revealed that many hunters who consumed it lost their memories. Authorities were now investigating the hunters who had taken Stardust. Then the news reported on the former vice guild master of the Grim Reaper Guild, Lee Min-sung. Authorities now knew he was a key figure in the Stardust distribution business. More importantly, a hiker had found his corpse at the mountain peak earlier that morning. Min-sung was once a famous celebrity, hailed as a hero by both the public and fellow hunters, so people were shocked to learn the truth about his involvement in illegal and criminal activities. The Grim Reaper Guild also formally requested a thorough investigation from the Hunter Association. Meanwhile, inside the Hunter Association chairman's office, we see Lim Taegyu holding his head in disappointment. He blamed himself for everything that had happened. With him in the room were Chairman Woo Jin-chul and Choi Jong-in. He told them both that none of this would have happened if he had just been strict with Min-sung instead of giving him a pass. Jin-chul told him not to be too discouraged. But Taegyu said there were still things bothering him. When they found Min-sung's body, it didn't look normal. And more importantly, Min-sung didn't possess any skills that could transform his appearance into that of a monster. Choi Jong-in asked if Taegyu was suggesting that Stardust transformed Min-sung like that. Taegyu replied that he wasn't sure, but it wasn't impossible. Taegyu once again brought up the other hunter wearing a black mask who had been hostile toward Min-sung when he encountered them. Choi speculated that the black-masked hunter might have been the one who killed Min-sung. On the side, we see Woo Jin-chul growing nervous for Suho, as the two S-rank hunters were once again discussing him. Then Choi Jong-in suddenly remembered that the black-masked hunter might be related to his own missing person case during a past raid, because one of his miners had gone missing. He pulled a photo from his coat pocket of the missing person, and it was indeed Sung Suho. He was registered as a D-rank hunter. Given the circumstances, he might have been a fraudulent registrant. Then from the other side of the meeting table, a man requested to see the photo of Sung Suho. Choi agreed, since the man was also involved in the case. And this man was none other than Teal, still hiding his true identity under the alias Park Dojin. He examined the photo closely to recognize Suho's face. While Woo Jin-chul worried deeply, he believed there was a high chance that Suho himself was the black-masked hunter they were talking about. But Jin-chul's real concern now was that Suho had become a missing person again, and he no longer understood what was happening to him. He wanted to ask Sung Jin-woo for help, but that was impossible for now. Jin-chul simply prayed for Suho's safety, while Teal stroked the photo with a creepy smile. Let's return to the darkness where Suho currently was, facing his own struggle. From afar, we can now see that the drawing on the floor of the respawn area that he had started long ago resembled a series of circles. Viewed from above, it became clear. Suho had been mapping the entirety of the maze he was trapped in, and he was close to completing it. The respawn area was at the very center of the maze, and along these open corridors, he now had to find where the real final boss room was hidden. Just a bit more effort, and Suho would achieve his goal. His perseverance was intense, and the focus in his eyes said it all. Meanwhile, inside the shadow dungeon, Amit could be seen getting irritated with Biru, calling him a bug. He scolded him, saying that freaking out wouldn't bring Suho back to them, so he should just calm down. But Biru couldn't calm down because he was truly worried about Suho. and so he just kept pacing back and forth in a circle. He called Amit a cold-blooded reptile for being able to stay calm despite not knowing anything about how Suho was doing or where he was. Gray and Essel didn't comment. Biru continued to cry, saying he hadn't slept since the day Suho disappeared. Essel then spoke to Amit, saying she understood why Biru was acting this way. It had already been 2 weeks since Suho entered the gate that led him to the advancement quest, and he still hadn't come out of it. But instead of showing sympathy, Amit simply confirmed that even Essel was also worried for their young lord. Essel frowned at that. Then she asked Amit if he wasn't being a little too calm. He was also a comrade of Suho's, so why didn't he seem to be worried about him at all? Amit responded with a question of his own. Wasn't it clear to them what kind of person Suho really was? According to Amit, he understood that they were comparing Suho to the great shadow monarch himself, which is why they were treating him like a child. Amit had never met the shadow monarch in person. Essel was confused by what Amit was explaining. Amit continued anyway. For him, Suho was the type of person who, even if all his bones were crushed, all his flesh torn apart, and he was pushed beyond his mental limits, would never once think of giving up. He saw this firsthand from training with their young lord, which is why he was certain and confident that Suho would make it out safely from any trial he would face. Biru kept crying and, in agreement, just called Amit a reptile again with long streams of tears falling from his eyes. Essel smiled and said that Amit wasn't wrong. They all knew they had no choice but to trust in Suho. Back inside the tutorial dungeon, we see original Suho currently charging forward with a punch, and it's aimed at tutorial Suho. Suho sent that punch flying at him while shouting if he thought he would just keep dying over and over forever. But with just a nonchalant block from tutorial Suho, the entire body of original Suho was obliterated by the sheer force of the counter. When original Suho revived next, he immediately rejoined the fight, but this time he launched a flying axe kick at baby Suho, who was simply waiting for him while playing with building blocks. Suho charged in with great intensity and courage, but with a single motion of baby Suho's finger, his limbs and torso were immediately torn apart. Suho said he had lost count of how many times he had died, and after dying so many times, he eventually realized that he could now see the status windows of his past versions. His baby version was highly proficient in telekinesis. He had no player level at this time, but the skill ruler's authority was already maxed out. Meanwhile, his tutorial version, who could destroy objects with just a touch, had the class Soul Striker. In addition to that, he was also already a monster at level 99. So Suho simply lay down on the floor after his next revival at the center of the respawn point. But after a short rest, he did a Chinese get up to rise and started Naruto running in frustration. He was annoyed that he couldn't get far enough to finish mapping out the dungeon because he kept getting stopped by his 2 past selves. But with every death he experienced, he noticed that his fear of dying kept decreasing. He had come a long way and could even smile back at baby Suho while getting killed by him face to face. Until the very last second he remained alive. He would continue to show courage and resolve before getting obliterated once again. Still, he knew he couldn't apply this mindset to the real world, where people only have one life. And that was exactly why he knew he had to fight desperately just to survive. Countless deaths meant countless challenges, and because of them, he felt himself growing stronger. He continued mapping out the dungeon piece by piece until only one area remained unexplored. He understood that if he didn't find a door there, it would mean the only way to complete the advancement quest was to defeat baby Suho and tutorial Suho. Suho began walking out of the respawn area to head to the remaining unexplored section, and only now did he realize that the longer he spent exploring, the shorter the time gaps were between his encounters with tutorial Suho and baby Suho. When he got close to the area he was heading for, he smiled, realizing his hunch was right. There stood baby Suho, waiting for his arrival, holding his weaponized toys. Suho thought that judging by the scenario, baby Suho and tutorial Suho's true goal might be to block his path to the unexplored area. Still, Suho sprinted toward baby Suho. He knew that the ruler's authority skill used invisible hands, so he thought of countering baby Suho by surrounding himself with his own ruler's authority. And because of this, when he saw the first spark of collision flash right in front of his face from the clash of the 2 rulers' authority skills, he was able to react early and dodge it. The collision created a small but intense burst. Using the force of that as a spring, Suho jumped high into the air to leap past Baby Suho. Baby Suho looked up in shock. He hadn't expected Suho to make such a move. Then Baby Suho looked behind to pull Suho back, but suddenly a coat covered his face, so he couldn't see where Suho had gone. Suho had taken off his coat and thrown it at Baby Suho's face. This allowed him to gain some distance and successfully pass him. But Suho's nerves spiked again as he got close to the final unexplored area, which was through the next left-hand passage. He quickly peeked inside, anxious, because if there was no door, that would be bad news. Fortunately, he did find a boss monster room door. He was running so fast that he had to do a skid stop to make the turn. At first, he couldn't believe it. Maybe because he was too used to being disappointed inside the tutorial dungeon. But he still happily ran toward the door because he was right. There was another boss aside from the two bosses he couldn't defeat. And just as he was nearing the door, a sudden wave of anxiety and fear hit him. He felt that Tutorial Suho was now approaching his area. Tutorial Suho was rushing in with such intense strength and speed that he was destroying ceilings, walls, and floors as he leaped through them. Now Suho was sure that his past selves really wanted to stop him from entering this door, so he knew he had to hurry and open it. He knew he was done for if Tutorial Suho caught up to him here. And unfortunately, he was already close. Suho looked behind him, sweating, while Tutorial Suho gave him a menacing stare. Tutorial Suho began walking slowly toward him. Then, in the blink of an eye, he vanished. He had rushed towards Suho so fast it was like a laser beam. But we then see that Suho managed to open the door just in time. And right as Tutorial Suho was about to reach him, Suho had already closed the door from the inside of the boss monster room. After that, Suho was left gasping from the intense stress and thrill of what he had just been through. After recovering a bit, he wondered if his two past selves could enter through this door. But since everything remained quiet, he confirmed to himself that he had successfully escaped from them. He slammed both hands against the door in relief. But he still knew that his trial wasn't over. What mattered now was who he would face inside the boss monster room. Based on everything that happened, it was likely another version of his past self, like the early Tutorial Suho, or maybe the one carrying lots of weapons. But aside from those, he couldn't think of any other past version of himself he might face now. And now, the boss monster Suho had to defeat to complete the advancement quest finally appeared. It was another version of Suho, this time wielding dual swords. Suho took a long look at the opponent steadily walking toward him, and it was confirmed. This was yet another version of himself. He had the same darkness in his eyes. But the most distinct difference was that this one had dual swords equipped. One of the swords, the one in his right hand, was red. The two Suhos sized each other up as dual sword Suho began releasing his aura. Suho observed him carefully, confused as to why this opponent wasn't one of his real past selves, unlike the two enemies outside the door. Dual sword Suho was using his own copy of Raken's Fong. But Suho was more puzzled by the fact that instead of a gauntlet like the Vulcan's horn he used to have, the version in front of him was wielding it as a sword. Suho wondered if this was a result of some glitch that created dual sword Suho, so he checked the status window to see his stats. What he saw surprised him, and after processing it, he could only smile. He was happy, because for the first time, he finally had a worthy opponent. Suho immediately charged in to deliver a flying kick. Dual sword Suho blocked it using both his swords, but the impact still pushed him back, skidding far across the floor. Still, he showed no signs of fear. The reason Suho was so pleased to face him was that this opponent was only a level 32 player. His stats were overwhelmingly lower than Suho's. Suho became extremely confident, especially seeing how vast the difference was in their strength stats. But something in dual sword Suho's reaction made it clear he was about to unleash something serious. And Suho was right. Dual sword Suho used the reinforcement technique to boost both his attack and defense. Then, using Wind of the Grassland, he increased his movement and attack speed. Finally, he activated Giant's Armor for an even greater defense boost. Suho was stunned. Dual sword Suho was using Amit's very own skills, and he couldn't understand how this guy was able to cast so many buffs. But there was no time to keep thinking. Dual sword Suho rushed at him and unleashed a flurry of slashes, which Suho managed to dodge entirely. He then charged again using the Storm Slash skill. Annoyed, Suho drew his own dagger, frustrated that this version of himself also had Storm Slash. He countered Dual Sword Suho's Storm Slash with his own. The result was an intense clash of forces that looked like two mini cyclones spinning in opposite directions and colliding. Suho found himself thankful for his earlier decision to save his dagger, fearing it might get destroyed in the fight against Minsum. Then, Suho's eyes widened as a slash grazed his cheek, and suddenly, a memory flashed in his mind. He was defeating Brokey in a duel easily with Raken's Fong and Storm Slash. But Suho knew that wasn't how the real fight against Brokey went. As the duel continued, and more blades struck him, like one grazing his right forearm, he kept receiving new memories he never experienced. This time, it was Miho running while carrying Suho on her back. Suho realized that every time Dual Swords Suho injured him, a mental attack accompanied the physical one. So Suho backed away from their exchange of slashes to rest briefly. Still glaring at him with deadly eyes, Dual Swords Suho suddenly said the word, "Arise." A shadow soldier was summoned, and its movement speed rivaled that of original Suho. It also had wings and a tail that resembled an ant. But in a close-up shot where both Suhos were clashing blades, we see that the summoned shadow was not Biru, but a new character we hadn't met yet. And this fight was far from easy for Suho. The system confirmed that this summoned shadow was named Quasi and that it held the rank of Knight. But because Suho was so distracted by Quasi, he didn't notice Dual Swords Suho leaping high into the air above him. Dual Swords Suho then landed a downward slash right into Suho's midriff. Now Suho was having trouble dealing with both Quasi and Dual Swords Suho at the same time. What baffled him even more was how a level 32 Dual Swords Suho could summon a shadow soldier from nothing. But as their battle wore on and the clashes continued, Suho gradually started to understand what was happening. The memories flowing into his mind were not his. They were the memories of this other Sung Suho, one who came from a different world. In that world, there was another Biru, a literal baby ant-looking shadow soldier. Gray, Essel, and Amit also existed there, although Gray and Essel appeared more youthful. That other version of Suho was happily spending time with his friends, smoothly solving their problems. Suho came to realize that the system gives trials suited to their individual situations, and those trials exist to make them stronger. He wasn't sure if a glitch brought Dual Swords Suho to him, but he still chose to fight until the end, even after Quasi's strike knocked away his dagger. Quasi then prepared a powerful piercing attack and charged at Suho with a sharpened fist. Suho tried to stop it with his right hand, and it pierced straight through. The pain made him question why the system always gave him trials that were so difficult to handle. Why did he always have to push himself beyond his limits? Not once had he ever received an easy trial he could simply overcome, especially now, after dying hundreds of times inside this dungeon. Then we see Dual Swords Suho now flanking him from behind, ready to strike with Raken's Fong and Vulcan's Horn. But before he could land the hit, Quasi suddenly froze. Something strange was happening to his shadow body. Just as Dual Swords Suho's attack landed, Suho blocked it, using a brand new shadow gauntlet, which he had just created by absorbing Quasi's shadow using the transformation skill. Suho now had a fierce and intimidating look on his face. And now Dual Swords Suho was the one looking shocked and nervous. Suho said he had finally learned something from all the death and despair he had experienced. Sitting down won't make things any better. Then, he punched Dual Swords Suho hard using his new shadow gauntlet. The impact was so strong that both of Dual Swords Suho's swords shook violently from blocking it. Suho followed up with more punches, pummeling Dual Swords Suho. He now understood that this wasn't about the system having bugs. It was about his own misunderstanding of how to use the system from the very beginning. Dual Swords Suho switched his grip, flipping both swords for backhand attacks. Suho read his movements well and dodged by flipping into a handstand. The impact of the missed strike still cracked the floor. Then we see something new. The shadow from Suho's gauntlet moved from his fist down to his left leg, transforming into a shadow greave. Since Dual Swords Suho's swords were still stuck in the floor, he couldn't dodge quickly enough as Suho prepared a powerful downward handstand kick. Dual Swords Suho managed to focus just in time and blocked the kick, but the impact sent him flying backward. And since he had to use both swords to block, he couldn't prepare for Suho's next move. Suho immediately rushed in and landed a devastating left straight punch directly into Dual Sword's Suho's stomach. The force of the hit shattered a huge portion of the wall behind him as his body slammed through it. Suho let out a loud shout, clenching his fist, fueled by the thrill of their battle. He declared that the system wasn't the one raising him. He was the one controlling and using the system. From this moment on, Suho wouldn't just follow the path the system laid out for him. He would choose his own future and make it happen. To seal his victory, Suho landed a final finishing punch. Once the dust from the rubble cleared, we saw Dual Sword's Suho lying unconscious on the ground. And standing over him, panting and exhausted, was Suho, victorious at last. A system notification confirmed it. Suho had defeated the being inside the gate, the final boss. At long last, he had cleared the advancement quest. He was then awarded a new title, the one who overcame adversity. This title gave him a unique buff, a 1% increase in all stats for every 1% of HP he lost. Suho walked over to his fallen opponent and noticed the body glitching out. He wondered aloud if this really meant the quest was over. Then the final results of his advancement quest appeared, and the system began to analyze his performance. He had managed to defeat an opponent with vastly superior abilities. He also maintained his mental strength despite dying hundreds of times. His mental growth had surpassed physical limitations. The system acknowledged his creativity and unyielding spirit. As a result, Suho was presented with 3 class options to choose from. He could only pick one, and he wasn't pleased at all. Before he could complain, he checked what the 3 classes were. First, Heir of the Shadows, his current power as the descendant of the Shadow Monarch. Second, Soul Striker. Choosing this would erase his Shadow skills and replace them with Soul Striker abilities, though it wouldn't include the tutorial Suho's high stats. And the third was a mystery. The system concealed its name behind 4 question marks, but it was labeled as a recommended class based on his traits. If selected, it would become a hidden class, and his Shadow skills would also vanish. Suho understood the options. The first would leave him as he was. The second would take him back to the past. And the third would send him down an unknown path of adventure. But understanding that only made him more frustrated. He couldn't believe that after everything he'd been through, all the deadly challenges and suffering, the system would only give him a single reward to pick. Grumbling to himself, he grabbed the 3 glowing orbs. He tried to manipulate them and said he wanted them all. The orbs began to glitch and merge together as Suho forced the result he wanted. Eventually, he succeeded in absorbing all 3 simultaneously. His entire body was engulfed in light. The job class transformation had begun, and once it was completed, he received a brand new job title. But before we find out what that title is, we return to the Shadow Dungeon. Here, we see Biru completely sprawled out on the ground, sobbing and drained, having cried himself to the point of exhaustion. His lord Suho is the only one in his mind. Essel picked Biru up from the ground and told Amit that it had already been 3 weeks since Suho entered the advancement quest gate, and they still had no news about him until now. Biru called Amit a gator and desperately begged for confirmation if he thought Suho was okay. Gray also ended up crying at Amit's reply because he admitted he hadn't expected that they'd go this long without any word. Amit thought something might have happened to their young lord. Biru screamed in panic at what Amit said. Suddenly, Gray was startled and turned toward a specific direction, as if he sensed something. What he sensed was Suho's arrival, emerging from a gate that appeared. Suho even commented that it seemed like everyone was doing okay after all. Suho's comrades couldn't even react, yet as they watched his arrival. Suho told them long time no see. Amit remained calm and confident, while Essel, Biru, and Gray all broke down into tears from overwhelming happiness at seeing Suho again. Echoes of their loud cries of Lord Suho could be heard throughout the ruins of the city. Now let's go to the city, inside the Ajin Company building. At the head office, we see Jinho, who was deeply worried. He was talking with Chairman Wu Jinshul, desperately asking for any news about Suho. Jinshul replied that he was ashamed to admit that the Hunter Association hadn't heard even a single rumor pointing to Suho. He confessed to Jinho that the entire mood within the Hunter Association wasn't good right now. Many were suspecting that Suho himself was the one who killed Lee Min-sung. Jinho stood up emotionally, his face turning red in anger. He told Jinchul that Suho was the type who would never commit murder. Jinchul agreed with him and said the issue might be connected to what Suho had told him about the interim apostle who intended to invade Earth. Jinho said that in their previous world, he had done nothing to help his brother Sung Jin-woo with his battles. That was why now he wanted to make sure he could fully support his nephew Suho. It seemed Jinchul understood his sentiments. Then, Jinchul's phone suddenly received a red alert notice and vibrated on the table. Their conversation was interrupted because Jinchul couldn't afford to ignore the message. He was filled with concern as he checked the report he received, since he'd been getting too many emergency reports like this lately. It seemed the Hunter Association was keeping a close eye on these incidents. In the next scene, we learned that the issue was about another dungeon break incident. This time, a large number of high-ranking salamanders had broken out from a gate. Four hunters near the area responded to help subdue the incident, but they were visibly nervous. And rightly so, these monsters were far too strong for them. One of them was easily caught by the powerful physical strike of a salamander, who started toying with him like a doll. Even though they were in a dire situation, the three remaining hunters chose to stay and fight. The swordsman couldn't believe that a massive dungeon break was happening in the middle of the city. Meanwhile, on a rooftop near the area, we see Teal sitting on the ground, hiding and clearly bored. He was disappointed with the current team of hunters assigned there, calling them lame in combat. According to Teal, he had already learned in the past that to enter the core of the Hunter Association, you needed achievements. And the greater the damage caused by a disaster, the more attention it received. And more attention meant better results. For Teal, humans were strange, because they only remembered the names that made headlines instead of recognizing the truly heroic hunters who risked their lives headfirst and died in battle to save others. Now, a few reinforcements had arrived to help in the fight, and the salamander that was holding the hunter earlier threw him toward a building. Then suddenly, a night hunter appeared out of nowhere and slashed the salamander hard with a side attack. The salamander was hurt, especially since the knight cut through the flesh in the center of its mouth. After landing safely, the knight immediately told the other hunters to take position behind him. The hunters were overjoyed and gained confidence in their safety, now that B-rank hunter Hwang Jae-hyung had arrived. Teal, on the other hand, was annoyed because he didn't want a B-rank hunter helping the others. So he made his move and began using his possession ability. To make this scene stand out in the headlines, he used his possession ability on the same salamander that was fighting Hwang Jae-hyung. He immediately made the salamander attack, and the impact was so strong that Hwang started bleeding from his eyes, mouth, and nose. The attack from the salamander's tail was so powerful that Hwang was sent flying and crashed into a building. Hwang remained slumped in the rubble, unable to move. He couldn't believe how the mana of the salamander suddenly spiked so high. The salamander threw a punch at him again. But this time, it wasn't just one salamander. The entire clan of salamanders that had come out from the dungeon break charged at him. They rained down blows on Hwang, and it was a truly horrifying sight, not just for us, but also for Hwang's fellow hunters who could do nothing but freeze in fear and watch his terrible fate. Afterward, only Hwang's spilled blood remained on the ground. He suffered total obliteration, literally, at the hands of the salamanders. And the one responsible was the salamander possessed by Teal. The swordsman hunter cursed in his thoughts, trembling in fear over what he just witnessed. He thought to himself that he had just been lucky. He got free money and used it for leg treatment. He even bought a new sword. He thought he could return to being a hunter. And as the three salamanders rushed at him, he accepted his fate and just stood there, thinking how reckless he had been for a D-rank hunter who tried to be a hero and save lives. Then, out of nowhere, a man dashed at high speed past his right side from behind. It was none other than Sung Suho, who had quickly arrived to help the hunters. The salamander's teeth were shattered by the flying kicks Suho delivered, and the force of the impact was so great that the hunters felt the rush of air that came from it. The swordsman's face was frozen in complete disbelief over what just happened. Then, Suho attacked the two other salamanders in the area, and he only needed one strike each to destroy them. Suho still wore his black shadow mask while acting as a vigilante hero, and the swordsman was shocked when he noticed it. He realized that the hunter who had come to save them was the same one who previously hired him as a proxy in raids. This swordsman was the former cripple who knew Suho's secret about his solo raid chain. What he knew was that the black-masked hunter was only a D rank, so he couldn't understand how he had just effortlessly killed the salamanders. Meanwhile, Suho was just excited about the fight because it was his first chance to test out his new skills that he gained from his job change. He set a rise and successfully extracted a shadow soldier from the salamander he just defeated. Then he immediately used his ability called Shadow Form Change to absorb its shadow. Next, we see shadows flying toward the swordsman, who was once again shocked by what was happening. A shadow wrapped around his arm and formed a shadow bracer. The swordsman and the other hunters wondered where these pieces of armor they were now wearing suddenly came from. Even their weapons were enveloped by shadow buffs. Biru was utterly shocked as he watched everything. He was on the verge of tears from how proud he was of Suho. Biru asked Suho if he really could apply shadow form transformation to others now, but Suho replied that his ability was not a transformation skill. According to Suho, if his skill were a transformation type, the creations wouldn't be classified as items. So, we can see that Suho's status window showed details about the Shadow Naga Warrior Crescent Blade, one of the weapons he had just created. The Shadow Naga Warrior bracers worn by the swordsman also granted defense and vitality buffs. Because of this, the swordsman suddenly felt lighter. The Shadow Naga Warrior's sword he now used also gave many attack buffs and pierce enhancement. Biru was stunned by Suho's new ability to create items using shadow soldiers. Even Sung Jinwoo didn't have this kind of ability. Biru realized just how different Suho's power was now that he had acquired a new job class. And that job class was the Irregular White Shadow. Suho, on the other hand, realized that he no longer needed to hide his identity behind the black mask. So he took it off and asked the swordsman if he could still fight. The swordsman didn't answer because he was too shocked. And now that Suho's face was exposed in public, he again asked for the swordsman and his fellow hunters' help in the battle, since it wasn't over yet and many salamanders were still charging at them. Teal stood up from his seated position on the rooftop upon realizing that Suho had finally arrived. He also noticed that Suho was now completely different from the last time he saw him, especially because he had just seen yet another new power from him. Then Teal gave a genuine smile because he noticed something had changed in Suho. He was no longer an isolated darkness fighting alone. We now saw that Suho had the ability to lead a group of hunters to fight alongside him. And because of his ability to buff others, that had now become a real possibility. We also saw that instead of the usual dark shadow aura, Suho was now displaying a white shadow aura that looked like white smoke. When we looked at Suho's status window, we saw he was already at level 42 and his stats had also risen significantly. Suho's strength stat remained the highest of all, currently at 130. His priority in distributing stat points when leveling up hadn't changed. His passive skills had also leveled up. Endurance was now level 4, and martial arts was now level 2. His current job class was the Irregular White Shadow. His main title now was the one who overcame adversity, and we knew the hardships Suho had gone through to earn it. His new job-exclusive skill was Shadow Creation, currently at level 1. Its capabilities were limited depending on the user's imagination, and as a skilled artist, that wouldn't be a hindrance for Suho. In fact, it was a powerful strength in his arsenal. The status window also stated that the shadows Suho used to create shadow weapons, armor sets, and items could no longer be turned back into shadow soldiers. We also noticed there was a second type of creation Suho could make from shadows, aside from items. But since the skill was still level 1, that part was currently locked and the status window didn't say what it was. But now, let's go to India, to the headquarters of the Asura Guild, the strongest hunter guild in India. There, we suddenly see a massive explosion coming from inside the Asura Guild building. Then, we find Rio bloodied and barely conscious, collapsed on the floor. In his thoughts, he was apologizing to Suho because he had no excuse. We also saw that aside from him, 3 other hunters were lying beaten and unconscious beside him. Rio was furious at himself because even after Suho had once saved him, he couldn't repay the favor. Then, we saw a muscular, giant-like man walking out from the scene. He was the one responsible for beating the Asura Guild's hunters and had apparently succeeded in extracting the information he needed. This man was Thomas Andre, and he was now heading to Korea after learning from the Azura Guild's hunters that the person he was looking for, who might have killed members of his scavenger guild, was a Korean. According to him, he would never forgive anyone who touched something that belonged to him. In the next scene, we see a view of the morning blue sky. Suddenly, sparks appear in the sky as a dark gate opens at the highest part of the atmosphere. As we enter, we see a blonde woman facing away from us. The area was covered in snow, but based on her hair color, age, and posture, it was clear that this woman was none other than Cha Hae-in, Suho's mother. Here, we see that she was facing the shadow figure of a dragon. Based on the shape of the dragon, it seemed to be Kamish, the shadow dragon of Sung Jin-woo.